Recording in progress.
Okay, sorry, it's a workshop, so if Heather shows up later, we'll be fine.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the workshop. Discuss the town Buckfield budget that Cameron has worked very hard on. Luckily he's here because he knows all the intricate details. Hoping to give folks an opportunity to present suggestions, and we're going to have the different departments present their budgets. And essentially we're gonna, list everything out and we'll work along because we've got two more of these scheduled
This week.
this week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thursday at 1.
Thursday at 1 and also Saturday at 9 for anyone who can't make it tonight. And of course, our inboxes are always open if you can't make it to any of the three.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up on my.
No worries.
I use an ad-supported note taking thing, so I have to sit here and watch it fast.
For governing.
I'll allow everything that. So if you want, I'll just start and kind of hit on some of the key points.
Please do.
So as all of you are aware, over the last 2 years, we've worked diligently to keep the budgets relatively flat so that the taxpayers didn't withstand any massive increases. If we did have an increase, it paced revenue growth. So we had a growth in revenue. So any budget increase was absorbed by that. And we did that despite rising costs and municipalities and other towns facing the opposite. Their budgets were blowing up, while ours were staying relatively the same. Maintaining level funding without compromising essential services has become increasingly difficult due to inflation and the rising costs of goods and services. Obviously, with tariff talks, we don't know what the cost of anything is going to be, in the next year or so, but we do know that the last year has shown us that prices keep rising. Key budget highlights: we aren't requesting any new debt service items, so the proposed budget does not include any new debt obligations. What that means is we're not asking to buy any trucks, we're not asking to buy any buildings, we're not asking to buy anything outside of what we already have. The budget does include adjustments for increases in supply lines and wage adjustments for fire and rescue, which we've been talking about for 2 to 3 years. We've talked about modifying the fire department pay scale, because the way it is right now, the firefighters get paid minimum wage when they respond to calls. So we've structured that to be based off of a certification level, which, depending on what the certification level of the individual firefighter is a considerable amount of time that they have to commit to train. Employee compensation, as far as increases for anybody outside fire and rescue, all I built into it was a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, which is actually not really a true inflationary number. I followed Social Security. So I did propose a health insurance benefit adjustment, and the reasoning behind that is, as you are all aware, we have been trying to hire somebody for public works for quite some time. And one of our biggest obstacles to bringing in experienced people is our health insurance offering is significantly below what other municipalities of similar size and larger are offering. Most towns, I reached out to several other towns. I got 5 or 6 responses from varying towns. What I seem to see is most municipalities are paying 100% of the individual insurance premium and then 80% of the family. So the employee's paying 20% for a family. I'm not proposing that. I think that's too much of a cost of Buckfield. So what I built into this as a proposal was going from the 80-20 on an individual to 90-10. And then employee and children coverage, I adjusted to 70-30, because that seems to be where we struggle the most. Basically, if we're trying to hire anybody that has any kids, they can't afford to come work here. And then family coverage, when I say family, I include your spouse. I kept that at 50-50. So most of the time, the other spouse is a working spouse and they have insurance that's offered to them at their employer. So they potentially could get their own insurance from their employer for themselves. So I didn't make any adjustments to that. Public Works Fleet Management, it's always a topic of discussion. You know, as you have an aging fleet, you have increased maintenance costs. So Preston and I talked before, or as we were writing this budget, rather than ask for a new truck, which we'll cross that bridge next year, on one of them. We're looking to put more money into the preventative maintenance side of the trucks that we have and take care of problems that may have been overlooked or haven't been taken care of in the past, which we've already started doing this year. We've put a considerable amount of money into our vehicles to make sure that they're running, but unfortunately with salt, calcium and all that stuff, things tend to fall out, so. But that's our plan for the summer, putting a lot of preventative maintenance into that fleet. So if you look at the budget, you're not familiar with where it was 2 years ago. I think our entire maintenance line for our trucks was $35,000. And then last year we went up 80,000 because we had to buy a new body for
The green bean.
the green P. So this year I've reduced that 80,000 down to 75,000 so that we take that 75,000 and turn it into our trucks. We have one sitting in the yard right now that it just needs time and money. And I had them pull it out of the garage because this year we just didn't have the money to put into it. So the plan is to get that truck back up to where it needs to be so that we can utilize that as the spare backup truck. And then hopefully limp it through another year, which is we have an older truck than that should be taken off the road. So that's our focus there. Solid waste is, that one had considerable increases, primarily due to disposal costs. If you're not familiar with it, Main Waste Energy started charging us $25 a mattress. So when you go there on a weekend and you see 6 or 7 mattresses, just think $25, $25, $25. So it's not a huge number, but that was a little bit of an increase I had to put in there. Rising costs for mainstream and bulky waste disposal. Main Waste Energy has been increasing our mainstream waste by $1 annually, and will continue to do that for the foreseeable future that I know of. And our bulky waste, which is the bin next to the building where people throw everything that doesn't go anywhere else, that went from $155 a ton to $175 a ton. So when you factor in that increase, the disposal costs had to be increased proportionately. With that said, we've also gone over budget on our disposal costs for the last 2 years, which is not a bad thing for the town because we didn't have to go back and ask for money, because we do have that. We have a solid waste bank account that if we go over budget, the money comes out of there. If we are under budget, the money will transfer back in. So if we end up running into that in the future, it's there. However, we can't continue to do that at $25,000 to $30,000 a year when it's blatantly obvious that the disposal costs are what's there. And if we're not charging disposal fees for anything, which I know we've discussed as a solid waste committee on a few occasions, it's not very popular. But the prices increase, we have to increase the cost. So that obviously that budget shared with Sumner, they pay 35% of that. So Sumner saw a huge increase in the estimate as well. I think there's went from 87,000 to 87. The overall budget is a little over 300,000, so 200 and something of that's town of Buckfield. At some point, it would be my recommendation that certain things be looked at and evaluated by the solid waste committee for charging.
And did you include those in your letter, or what would those things be?
Recommendations. I think primarily like refrigerators, getting rid of those because we have to pay to drain the Freon. The big thing that I would say is commercial debris. I know it's a thing that we haven't been talking about, or it's happening and nobody talks about it. But if you live in Buckfield, yes, you pay taxes in Buckfield, but if you're going out of town doing a job site, bringing the debris back home and dumping it in our transfer station, there should be a cost associated with that. I'm not saying it has to be immense, but that stuff adds up. Asphalt shingles, construction debris, sheetrock, that's some of the most expensive stuff that we get rid of. And we need to find a way to not have to keep burdening, I mean, think about it. You've been paying taxes for however many years. How many refrigerators have you gotten rid of?
Yeah.
You've paid for a lot of refrigerators to be disposed of, just like you have and anybody else. So I just assume pay for the refrigerator to get rid of it when I need to get rid of it. But that's just my take on it. I know the transfer station's been great. It's probably one of the best transfer stations as far as what you can get rid of. But how much longer that can be realistic, I don't know. So to sum up the overall packet that we're gonna go over, the proposed municipal budget, municipal expense budget reflects an 8.9% increase over last year. I know it seems like a lot, but when you start looking at some of our neighboring towns and they've had 7 to 10 or higher over the last 2 years, it's not that crazy. And that's before accounting for revenues. So the bad news, state municipal revenue sharing went up to $575,000 last year. That was great. Well, this year they came in and they're projecting 475. So had we kept the budget exactly the same, we still would have had $100,000 hole, so to speak, that we were no longer bringing in revenues. I don't know the reasoning behind it. I just get my projections from the state's website. Maybe it'll update and get closer, but I can't tell you the calculation that goes into it. Local revenue projections show a modest increase of 14,000, which would help to offset some of the revenue losses, but obviously it doesn't come close.
Right.
Additionally, we have 2 items on debt service that have fallen off, so that saved $30,000. So between the 30 and the 14, we're almost halfway there, but not quite. My budgets, as always, I have no information about county or the school. And I probably feel foolish for even putting a 5% increase in there because it's been proven wrong year after year, but I estimated a 5% increase. So all the numbers on this overall budget are going to be based off of a 5% increase for local school and county. Last year, RSU 10's increase was 11.1, and Officer County was 25%. So I'm hoping it's not a rerun of last year, but I do urge residents to engage in the RSU budget process. There's 2 key meetings that anybody in town should go to. There's a whole series of meetings that happen where they discuss the budget, but the 2 that I would recommend to people, the first one's May 19th at 6:30 at the Buckfield High School auditorium. And that's the budget informational meeting. So that's where they'll provide you with the information as to what's into the budget, kind of sort of what we're doing here. And then the one important meeting, and I know nobody wants to drive to Mexico at 6:30 at night, but the annual RSU 10 budget meeting is where voters from all the participating towns go and basically affirm the vote or the budget that's going to be voted on at town meeting. So when we get it to vote here, it's a number, it's either yes or no. This is the time where people can listen to what it is, and if they don't agree, they either vote against it or make a recommendation or whatever. This is the last chance that people have to provide input. So that one's on May 28th at 6:30 p.m. at Mountain Valley High School. And that's basically my long-winded overview of the budget. So if you don't have any questions, we can lead into what we have. Stacy's on hold.
Should we check in and see if anyone present has any specific concerns before we dive in page by page? Just see if we can see where anyone.
Sure, yeah. Does anybody have any specific concerns before we move ahead? No? All right.
Thank you.
We wanted to do the departments first.
Yeah, I don't want to waste all the time, so we can come back to general government because obviously I'm just at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Fire's not here yet, so we won't cover that. I say let's do Kathy and Brandon first. So we'll start with the library. I'll go over it, Kathy, and then if you want to just interject on anything, or if anybody has a question for Kathy, feel free to ask. I just gotta find the right page.
Page 15.
Page 15. Perfect.
It starts on 14. Yeah, it starts on 14.
All right.
Yes.
So. All the budgets that involve employees obviously start with wages. We've discussed the 2.5% suggested pay increase that I've made a recommendation for. So that's what I did for the librarian. That's what Kathy and I did for the librarian, as well as the library assistant. You'll notice that the amount under the library assistant decreased. she's not losing any hours. It's just a bookkeeping thing. We used to include all the time that was worked by library aides is what we're calling them now instead of subs. But we used to include that in the library assistant's wages. So what we've done is just broken those apart. So you can see there is a slight increase. The increase comes from the 2.5% recommendation for the raise for the library assistant, as well as I'm recommending that where are we? The library aides be paid a rate of $15.50 as opposed to $14.65. And they work on average about 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
So that's where that number comes from.
Okay.
So it's just slightly higher of what last year's number was. Obviously with increases, there's increases to Medicare, Social Security. Kathy and I did talk. She does go to trainings and some stuff with the state library occasionally. And when she does, we've never had budgeted mileage for it, but we still have to pay for it because that's what our personnel policy handbook says. So we've included $100 for mileage reimbursement for those purposes. The other employee benefit has always been the Thanksgiving and Christmas gift cards that are included in the personnel policy handbook, but that's also the line that I'm now including the paid family medical leave. That's the town share that we're required, which is the 0.5%, which all the employees are paying 0.5% as well. So that's where that's why that line increased. Everything else, general books, postage, that's all remained the same. We did not have an individualized training line last year to pay for those things. We just took them out of general. I'm trying to clean up the book so it's a little bit more transparent so people can understand where their money's being spent. So we did put $250 in the training line. Professional services, Kathy's come to me numerous times about, speakers and speaker fees. How do we pay for the speaker fees? Where do, so we've put that in that line.
Yep.
Technology, that is what we pay annually for our library software,
Yeah.
Webpack and
Resource.
Mate. And those are the exact costs of what it's been. Phone, fax, internet stayed the same, electricity is the same. Internet, I didn't budget for last year because we pay it annually through the state. And
Internet, yeah.
because I don't get a monthly bill, I didn't think about it. So
Yeah.
that's why that's there.
Okay.
Heating fuel, I increased a little bit because this year it seems like we've used a little more than we had anticipated. And then the building, we've stuck with 2,000. I put some of the things that we're working on, which we've already moved forward with putting the storm door on at the library. The flooring in the addition needs to be replaced. The tiles are coming up. Then we have septic issues right now that
I was gonna say, we don't anticipate all that to exceed 2,000 or just hoping.
I don't think it will. Of course, I wrote this before we ran into how's it been working?
It's working now that the weather's warmer.
So I think it's frozen. I probably what I'll do this summer is I'll have Nickerson or somebody come up and I'll have Preston dig out the tank and then have it checked out because I don't think it's been pumped out since, well, Preston's been here for 8 years, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a public it's a public restroom and people go in there. It could be pretty. So.
I'm glad to hear it's not at a total standstill.
Right, because we're happy. And the Tilts have been so nice to us.
So all in, the overall library budget request is it comes in at about $6,000 more than what it was last year. However, I go to the 28. That's not a huge increase, but the projected revenues for the library are just shy of $1,000 increase. So if you take that into it's 6. So yeah, we're looking at about 5,000 state library. As proposed. So aside from that, the library's pretty cut and dry as far as the amount of items that are in it. So if anybody has any questions, Kathy is here to answer them, and hopefully I did you some justice and everything.
Very good at some of them.
Are there any wish list items that you can think of that were?
That was what we had talked about when I said it'd be good to get a storm door on the front, and people that have been there since when I started working there would say, oh, it's just so expensive and Lowell's would have to do it and it would have to be designed. And so I thought, well, I don't think anybody's asked in years. They hadn't. And so we asked someone to do that.
Mhm.
And I think actually that would be out of this year's budget anyway, because we haven't spent any of that. Yeah, and then we keep getting, but the people on the library committee plus some other people have said you really need to have a generator.
Mhm.
So we've talked about it back and forth, and I have all these little pictures of possible generators, but I don't know what it would take to set one up, and have it somewhere. You have to house it somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I definitely
That's
think
such a
it's
fair
worth at
thing.
least pursuing a quote and getting an idea of what
Yeah.
we'd be looking at for that. Cause yeah, it's a really important resource, especially
we haven't
during the
had too
time
many
here where-
times, but last year we had that a week without,
yeah.
a couple days without.
My sole concern is the building freezing up. It's an old building, having, water issues and ruining the building. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want that to happen. We went, 3 days before we finally were like, we gotta do something. And we actually hooked up a generator to keep it warm, but it literally was. It was my generator and it was just enough to keep the heat running long enough to keep it from freezing.
And I was like, we can't even turn the lights. on.
Yeah.
Like a generator type thing, so when you sit there with a propane or a portable generator, that would be big enough. They handle the buildings, you use your ones from home,
Yeah,
if you need, could we get by with, say, a 75-50 watt generator? But
that
needed 3 days.
That was my thought process, was having a portable generator, but we'd obviously want to get an electrician over there and wire it so that we can plug it in the proper way. And just keep the building going when we need to and then put it away when we don't need it. I don't think they need a whole home generator that's gonna kick on when the power goes out. There's nothing there that's gonna be damaged if the power goes out for.
If you're running into a lot of, see that.
Yeah, no, that was not what I'm thinking. I'm thinking 7,500 watt generator, keep that building warm and enough power so that if it's a sustained cold event, people can go there and be warm a little bit,
Right.
Mhm.
Well, I
which is the same for here.
Load up the stairs and put up.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be one of those items that, they can house it over at Public Works. The big thing, I think the key cost here will be just getting the plug set up on the building so that we can.
I know it, just the one I have at the house, it's real simple.
Mhm.
It's the plug comes off the generator into a bigger plug in the wall, but all it is when they built the transfer switch, it's just almost like a piece of sheet metal
Yeah.
that goes across and you can't flip it on until your main breaker's closed.
Right.
And so it's not a whole lot of rocket science to it.
Do we know, anyone here know off the top of their head how much it costs to fit one of those into an old building?
Well, now that I have a whole list of commercial electricians, when I needed one for here, I could probably call out and ask. I don't know off the top of my head. I don't think it's that expensive. That's why when you asked about the pricing aspect of it, if that was just like one of those ticket items for that 1 year, the cost of that, and then even a 7,500 watt generator, you could find the right one at a halfway decent price that would be more than enough for the library.
Yeah, I have several pictures of them. When people had added what the cost of, what is it, a cable or the wire that you have to inside.
Yeah.
And what that would be and just
Okay.
things like that.
Yeah. Excellent.
But then the flooring aspect of it, I mean, it shouldn't cost too much to replace the flooring in that
No, that's
issue.
just entryway and the bathroom. Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, something waterproof, because I think when they did the addition originally, they just used stick down tiles, and unfortunately people walking in with snow and ice on their boots.
Yeah.
And then the issues with the bathroom, they pop off. We've got the same problem over at the fire rescue building that we need to address at some point, is all those tiles, as the building is settled, have just come off and it's making a mess. But. So that was the library. Anything else for that one?
I don't know.
Hear lots of good things.
You know?
I do, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Jeez.
Monthly things mostly.
Well,
Usually.
programming. Love it.
Yeah, we like it's coming in. Finally.
Yeah.
So I have Brandon here, who's the animal control officer, and the reason I have him here is because we've never had one here before. And he was integral over the last year of basically developing stats for the town of Buckfield and really what it takes to or what it costs for an animal control officer.
Yeah.
If anybody hasn't seen his stats, my bad, should have forwarded it on to you, but I look at them every month. And everything that he provided me for recommended budget, it aligns with what he's doing. So I'll let him hit on it. I mean, nothing's really much different than last year, except we built the budget in a way. In the past, it's just been 2 lines. Again, I'm trying to be more transparent in what it is. If somebody has a question on what we spent this on, or for his sake, if he wants to look at a budget and see what's been spent elsewhere, he can know. So on it's under public safety, page 9. All right. So currently, the stipend for the animal control officer for the town of Buckfield is $375 a month. I can tell you that does not cover the amount of work that he does. So based on his data, his analytics that anybody could look at if they want to, he's come out with a suggested increase up to 6,000 for the year. So what does that come out? It's $500 a month. So we don't pay him an hourly wage. It's just the stipend. FICA, Medicare, that's all been adjusted for that. Mileage is the big thing. We budgeted for $500 for mileage last year. Last year it was what, 78 cents a mile, 68 cents a mile. That adds up real quick. When he has to, and he lives right in the center of town, has to drive out to wherever and then drive over to Paris and then back, or drive to Augusta to drop something off that's required, or 6 trips over to check on quarantine. So we've got real figures on what we paid for mileage based on the call volume, and that's the big increase right there, is going from 500 to 3,200.
So you're on
Really-
call all the time.
Yeah,
Instantly.
you really can't avoid that because for the town's policies, you got to pay his mileage. And I don't know if you find anybody who's going to use their own vehicle unless the town would be willing to purchase a vehicle specifically for animal control. And I don't think anybody wants to do that. The maintenance and everything associated with it. Brandon does work with multiple towns, so maybe in the future there's an option there for the towns to combine, get together to share. I mean, most of this budget is based off of our share of the calls that he does for multiple towns. It's on our information. So I think there's potential in the future to help all the town, but also help us. And then we added the individual lines for the various different things that are there. Most of them are relatively small, and it's only the town's share of. Sorry, the school's doing their automated call right now. Share of uniforms, body cam subscription and stuff. That's to protect him and to protect the town. But that's a subscription that all the towns pay a portion of. It's not just Buckfield paying for that.
And that number that each town is paying towards it, actually had it weighted based on that town's call volume, mileage, mileage, and another piece that's leading me right now. But that came up with how much each town would be responsible towards paying for that. So trying to make it as fair as possible.
Good to know, yeah.
Just has to clarify the question, so what's on here is just specifically for the Buckfield share, okay?
I should have included the sheet that you provided me, but it's somewhere in my desk. I tried to incorporate it into this, and you had a lot of explanation details. So training courses, right? As an animal control officer, he's required to maintain certification by doing continued education classes every year. So that's just Buckfield's share. It's the same, you're right, it's the same amount of classes he has to take, so it's only Buckfield sharing in the cost. So the fact that he works for multiple towns is a good thing for us, because we're not having to pay the full cost of all those classes.
Yeah.
What else? Contracted services, that has nothing to do with Brandon. That's strictly the shelter fee agreement we have with Responsible Pet Care. And then I budget for a certain amount of cats and then emergency vet treatment that the town ends up being liable for if the owners aren't around or we get an animal and it ends up as our responsibility. Sometimes we try to get that money back from those owners, but we have to budget for it in order for it to happen. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty lucky to have Responsible Pet Care because if we didn't, we could be like some of our neighboring towns that have to take their strays to.
Harvest Hills, which is an amazing shelter,
But it's
down
in,
in Fiber.
yeah, it's a long drive. So mileage wise, I mean, we're lucky to have one right in our backyard.
For sure.
So that's pretty much all I have on that ring. Did I miss anything?
No, the only piece on there is that I am actively trying to pick up a town or two. When if that does happen, that would lower everyone's share a little bit, so it could come in projected less, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear good things. We stay that.
Well, it's very nice. Select board was stepping in at last year, yeah. All of that.
Bless Heather and Peter.
They're still.
Yeah. Thank you.
We had no idea.
So
There's a lot more to it than one might assume.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you feel like that 500 per month is more competitive? Would you like to see more, or do you feel like that's?
I'm much more comfortable there. Right now at the 375, for the several months from home, it breaks out to like $7 to $9 an hour.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, if I didn't have the mileage, I probably would have started, so. But I think that puts me much closer to like the $22 an hour range.
Yeah.
Much more for rural Maine, I think it's great.
Okay, yeah,
Which I think you'd find if we actually paid him an hourly wage at that rate. Sorry, Randy, but we'd probably be paying more than what this projected number is.
yeah, yeah. Well,
So-
if next year comes around and you feel like you want to see a raise there, we've got 3 board members who know what it's like to be in your shoes, so.
I don't ever want to have to go down the full goal again.
yeah, I did it too. Chasing critters is not fun.
Spare time between ambulance calls. Oh. Cool, well, thank you, Brenda.
Stacy's on the phone, so maybe I should hit on rescues more complex, but I'll get you next, I promise. You just have a lot of sections to yours. All right, so rescue starts on page 7.
Fire not gonna be here tonight?
Adam's on his way. He's he's back to work and
Yeah,
he gets
no
out
worries.
late, so he will be here.
Okay.
So as far as rescue, there's a few increases in here. One's primarily centered around wages. As you can see, looking at the number, it's relatively considerable. The rescue department today, in regards to the makeup of the department, is a lot different than the rescue department of 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we had a lot of local providers that had been here for a long time that did this as, you know, it was, I'm not saying that the ones we don't have don't currently like to serve their communities, but they also realistically have to survive. And in order to man the station, we got to be relatively competitive. So we currently, our EMTs are currently paid $17.11 an hour, I think is what it is, or maybe it's $17.08. I might get them switched. That is significantly below what EMTs are making elsewhere. And that's whether it's a municipality or a paid service. Obviously, we'll never be able to compete with a paid service. But we also need to know that when our employees are here waiting to take care of people in their time of need, that they're not stressed out about paying their mortgage or paying for their bills at home. So what we've done, we've talked about this for the last couple of years, and we did small increases. They were just like 3.5%. Last year I had done the in 23, I looked at the MMA salary survey, and a paramedic wage in 2023 was this was the 50th percentile, was 2650, and an EMT was 2070. So we're now looking at data that's 2 years old. So Stacy has put together a proposal for what she believes is a competitive rate for the service, so that we can continue to have the providers that we need. That's broken down on page 8. So that would put paramedics at 27, which is only 50 cents higher than what the 50th percentile was in 2023. Advanced EMTs would be at 24, and then the basic EMT would be at 21. So that's only 30 cents higher than what the 50th percentile was. And then drivers and juniors will stay at minimum wage. Obviously, our goal is, if we're going to have somebody on our books, we do have some drivers, but our goal is we want those drivers to be motivated to license to the next level. So that's kind of the incentive, right? It's minimum wage, or you license up and then you can get paid more. So that's where that cost increase is. And if you think about it, I mean, we have, with the exception of 1 day a week or 3 days a week, 1 day a week, we have on-call overnight Wednesday.
Yeah, something like.
And then we essentially have a crew of 2. So Wednesday nights, we have a provider at the station, and then we have the driver position as an on-call. And sometimes, depending if they live local, like Bob, if he wants to stay at home and do on-call instead of, be at the station, but be ready to take the call, there's that too. So that saves money whenever somebody does that. However, most of our providers live in Mechanic Falls, Oxford, Paris. They're not within a responding distance of the station. They can't do that. So they have to be here. And by law, we can't pay them $4 an hour to sit at our station.
Yes.
So we had to fix that last year for that purpose. But you're talking about 2 providers on 24 hours a day for the most part. So that's why that increase is what it is. If you go down to FICA, Medicare, employee benefits, that's all associated with the increase. The paid family medical leave is in there. Office supplies have stayed the same. Gas and diesel the same. Turnout went up. New members, new year.
What's turnout?
So it's basically uniforms. Obviously, turnout's more of a fire department thing, but when we have people working here, we want to make sure that they have a shirt or a sweatshirt that says, Buckfield Fire Rescue, identifying who they are. Communications equipment stayed the same. Medical, okay. The medical equipment aspect of it did increase, and the reason for this increase is Maine Health has started to charge us for our med box refills or whatever, or the meds that we get from the hospital. In the past, it's been free. They bill for it, but now we're paying that cost. So that's included in this, as well as any potential tariff impacts or increases associated with any of that stuff, because I hate to say it, but a lot of the stuff that we get doesn't come from the United States of America. Some of it does, but not all of it. So that increase there is associated with that. And that also includes one of our ProCare service contracts that will expire this year. Professional and tech training costs have increased significantly for EMT license level classes. And you may wonder, well, why do we pay for license level classes? Because when we pay for somebody's license, we basically have their commitment that they will be here for 2 years at least. We make them sign an agreement. If they leave before that time is up, they pay the town back a prorated amount based on the time of service that they've been here. So it's actually a good retention tool.
Yeah.
And again, with the budget, you have to budget for it in order to spend it. So if we don't budget for it, we can't offer that as a the medical director. We always pay $2,000 a year, and then any other professional service that we might need to solicit, like respiratory evals, that's included in that line.
Yeah.
And then unanticipated repair contingency, that's part of that $1,000 extra too. Rescue billing, the proposed revenue for this budget is $225,000 for our contract. 5.5% of that is what the billing company gets, which is actually a good rate. So that amounts for the $12,375. It looks like last year we under projected, I think, because we increased the amount that we were proposing and then never increased this line.
Mm,
So it was a correction of last year, but it matches the amount that was here. ALS, Auburn, Fire Department, I guess is what.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if we end up needing to call in a paramedic, because we do have some paramedics, Bob's a paramedic, we've got Hannah, we've got Dustin. We have 4 or 5,
Yeah, so,
but obviously they can't be working 24/7. So in the event that we need a paramedic and we have to call for ALS backup, if we call Auburn, they charge us $100 per instance. I'm pretty sure with the increases in med boxes that no longer pays EMS, whatever it's called, Main Health will begin charging for ALS. And that's going to increase the need for that line.
yeah, one day.
With that said, if they do start charging us and they call us for ALS, which does happen, we could also recoup some of those losses by billing them back for that. I don't think Auburn Fire will ever call us for ALS backup, but you never know.
Hey, Cam, can I just chime in on that?
Absolutely.
So where I got the figure from for that line was, I believe right off the top of my head, this is a guess. We had 55 intercepts last year between Auburn, Turner, and Pace. So I went with what Auburn charges us, which is $100 per intercept. So I just multiplied that by the 55, and that's where I came up with that ballpark figure in case if Main Health does start to charge, or Turner. Again, we don't know what that would be. But I would rather something on that line for an increase than being behind the 8 ball and being in the red on that line.
And I'll reiterate what she just said. I think we've under projected that figure. I think we always go over that $1,000 every year, and we just haven't adjusted it to the where it should be. 12 calls, $1,200. We're already over the line. So
yeah, yeah.
On a service that does how many calls a year do we do?
423. But I just did the numbers today for next week's meeting, and we've already run 85 calls so far this year.
It's only March 4th, so our calls are increasing, and 12 ALS calls is really not a realistic, like, that's insanity. That's like saying we're gonna have a paramedic on the clock, 98.2% of the time. And it's just not.
And you're also billing more. It's the paramedic on the truck, so
Correct.
conversely offsets it somewhat.
So we're able to bill for it when they jump on our truck, but they're recouping some money for providing that person. If you look at utilities, I've completely pulled all the utilities out of fire and rescue.
Yep.
And the reason behind that is a bookkeeping thing, but primarily a frustration thing. Every time I pay a phone bill, I have to split it twice. So it creates twice the amount of work. So I've created a separate line of accounts that is public safety complex, just like the municipal center, where I've included all the phone fax, electricity, heat, all that stuff. The one line that does stay on both fire and rescue is their internet line, and that's because the units have internet inside the trucks to do reports and run IM responding and whatever else they need while they're on the call. And then rescue vehicle maintenance stayed at $10,000. I think we're looking good right now. However, it is fair to mention we do have roughly $108,000 in that reserve account. We purchased 451 as a band-aid for 2 years, and we were going to remount it. We've been on a list to remount for over a year. We're still on the waiting list, and in the near future, we're going to figure out how we need to come up with that other 100,000, 120,000 to either finalize a remount or buy an already complete truck. But that truck is currently, it's a 2012, so it's 13 years old. And when you look at assets wise for ambulance, I mean, 10 years is even pushing it, but 10 years is what I use as a figure for when these trucks should be rotated out. And we are obviously over that. So
And
3 years past 2 years.
And to add on to that, 451, the last time it was in the shop, the mechanic said that it's burning oil. And we've walked around the truck. The truck has a lot of body rust to it, some damage to it. So I mean, it's a discussion to have in a little while, but just to put it on our radar. But I think if we remount it, we're just adding another Band-Aid to it. The amount that it's going to cost to repair that box is going to be pretty significant. And like Cam said, as of April 11th, we'll have been on that waiting list just to order the chassis for a year. And I mean, I don't even know if they'll even honor that quote that they gave us a year ago, or if they have to requote it back out because it's been so long.
Which is. Prices have changed a lot.
Yeah.
As it stands right now, I think 452's box in the future, when it's time to remount that box is fine.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the ambulance. And then if we did find the right truck at the right price, that would basically be the same cost as the remount. You could give us a new box to start with, or you know what I mean, something that's already good to go. Yeah. That's something that needs to be on your radar because I mean, we have contracts with Hartford and Sumner. Yeah, and that's part of the revenue that we bring in, and we need to make sure that we have what's available. Because if one truck goes down and the other one's done, we have nothing. And there's nobody to borrow trucks from anymore.
That's right. 3 years minimum.
Yeah.
Truck. But there are some places out there that are, they're getting ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can pick up refurbished, they call it, ambulance with a new chassis, ready to go. And it's pretty reasonable, actually. They've come a long ways.
I think I saw some 4-wheel drive ones, right? Because we have these 2-wheel drive ambulances and we drive street kid, which is the worst. I'm glad you guys drive safe and you get everybody there safely, but they've got some, truck chassis ones, 4-wheel drive. I think we were looking at paying close to $200,000 for a remount, and they had them listed for like $230,000.
Ready to go.
Yeah.
So you drop your old one off, you pick up the new one. It's like,
Yeah.
And the one good thing is we already have 108,000 set aside specifically for this, so
Right.
we're halfway there.
Yeah, considering how much we should be looking at our capital improvement, I think that is definitely something worth exploring.
Where's the part, general part,
Of course.
uninitiated? It's not throwing stones or anything. General one. I'm seeing all these blind items for fire and rescue. But correct me if I'm wrong, but if I were to call for an ambulance, there would be a charge to me, right?
they charge your insurance for the transport.
Right. So we're paying for that here though, aren't we? So again,
Insurance reimbursement is about 30 cents on the dollar for ambulances right now.
So I'll summarize this. So you look at this overall total for the budget, and then later on in the document, you see revenues. So you're not paying this true cost of what this budget is, because it's subsidized by that billing charges to the insurance company. So if there's a federal rules, if we bill Medicare, we have to bill everybody equally the same. So if we chose not to bill, we would have to raise all the money it costs to fund this. But instead of the full amount of what you're looking at, you deduct those revenues from the backside. And that gives you the total that we actually tax out. So you're paying a small amount of the budget, the excess that we're not reimbursed for, and then the insurance and the patients, when they do get billed, make up that difference. So this, even looking at this, isn't paying for the full cost of our department. We just have to show it on an expense sheet or an expense line, and then show the receipt of the revenues on the back end, and then deduct those two numbers, and that comes up to our true cost.
so. Let's say I called, you guys took me down to St. Mary's, what would the bill to the insurance company be?
What is our rate? I'm not sure what our rates are.
We just went over this.
Yeah.
So I should have it relatively close.
So 20-ish miles.
So I think it's, actually I gotta sit there at the desk, hold on.
But yeah, if you turn to, when he says the back end, he's talking about on page 26, that's where you can find the revenues that we are making. Under rescue.
So looking at that, the 26,680 is the additional revenues from billing staff.
Page 26, public safety rescue revenue.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
What amount comes from that billing, from that 30 cents on the dollar? That's on this, like, which line item?
So if you look at the 105, 325, 3500 rescue department. That $225,000, if you back out the 26,680, that's the contracts we have with Hartford and Sumner. The difference is what we're estimating that we will recover in actual billing revenue.
Thank you.
Difference between the insurance companies and the patient.
Yeah, generally, yeah, yes.
So typically what happens, it goes through our billing company. They'll send, I think, three, why is this not open? 3 bills. They'll send 3 bills, an initial bill, and I think they'll send up to like the 90-day mark. If they still haven't received, they say it's self-pay, it's not insurance. If it hasn't been paid, it'll then go to collection. So sometimes when people look at our figures of what we have outstanding on our rescue line from our billing company, they see like currently this month, I think we have 65,000 outstanding in billing revenue that hasn't been collected yet. But after the 3 months, when it falls off the collections, that number comes off that report. So we have that with the billing company, but then we also have the collections company who I think their return rate's like 6%.
Yeah,
So of another, $100,000 that'll sit there or whatever. And as that comes in, that'll be considered revenue, which will offset the cost.
No, I think you answered my question early on with the, this pays a good portion of it, but yet the revenues from. Which,
it helps
we
offset.
are paying for the whole kit and caboodle when we call for the ambulance, the town, we're all kicking in for it. So
Right,
it'd be a reduced rate we're paying really.
yeah,
Correct.
yep.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Of course, thank you for asking.
I'm sorry, my laptop apparently doesn't want to open up Adobe documents. It wants me to pay for a subscription, so I'm just gonna open it on my tablet. Rescue. All right, so if it's a standard, and again, what we bill and what we actually collect, it's 2 different things. If it was a standard BLS transport, which is basic life support, doesn't require a paramedic. The flat rate is $945, and then the mileage is $23 a mile loaded. So that would be not the time they leave, but the time they pick you up and take you to the hospital. So that's the full bill, but then if you have insurance, there's negotiated rates. So that may be a lower amount than what we actually bill. Medicare does not pay that amount. Medicare pays significantly less than this, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, 300.
It's like 3, yeah. So we could bill out $1,200 and they'll pay us $330.
So. If Medicare pays you that 335, is the other part of that go to the patient?
With Medicare, if you're a Medicare patient, that automatically is adjusted up.
That's the cutoff.
We cannot collect that.
Good for me to.
Private insurance. Private insurance is a different story. If you have negotiated rates, the billing company can't charge you more than what that negotiated rate is, but if, depending on your insurance, it only covers say 80%, you're still liable for that billing.
Yep, got it, thank you.
And then with this budget for the state, they're looking at a 6% tax on revenue for ambulance services, so. That's still up in the air. We don't know how that's gonna go.
Have they given us an answer as to whether municipal services are exempt from that?
I don't think anybody's gonna be
I
exempt.
don't know how you tax a non-taxable entity, but
Yeah,
there's no rules written for it, so you don't really know where that's gonna land.
Yeah, we're not sure yet, but
Um,
yeah,
keep track.
But yeah, so I mean, to sum that all up, you see this big budget and then you see a revenue line and you notice the revenue line isn't the full cost of it. That's just the EMS in the state of Maine and across the country has been fighting this battle. The state of Maine did the stabilization grant to help services out, right? The town of Buckfield qualified for $15,000 in grant money. It paid for a couple new radios, some pieces of equipment that fortunately we didn't have to tax out to the residents. And some training for getting some of our providers leveled up again with the same 2-year agreement that they have to stay with us and provide a certain amount of time. So that in no way helps stabilize services in rural Maine. It's unrealistic.
Yeah.
But
When people get training like EMS or EMT, I mean, or paramedic, do they pay for that themselves?
so what we do, some of them do. What we offer, and we only have a limited amount of funding. So what we do offer is if there's a member that, can't afford that, we will pay for it. However, they have to pass the class and they have to commit to at least 2 years with us at a certain amount of hours and shifts per month. And then if they leave us, they are on the hook for a prorated amount of what that class costs. So the town doesn't lose out on it. We get a provider that we're at least getting 2 years of service out of them. So it's really a win-win for everybody. And I think, Stacy, what was the last cost for a EMT class that we paid?
The EMT class now is $1,800.
I remember.
And yeah, and advanced is $2,400 or $2,600. So, and a paramedic, the last I knew was $14,000.
Yeah, because the paramedic process is pretty much just like an associate's degree, really. I mean, when you go through the whole process. So
Nursing school now.
yeah,
Yep.
I mean, and it's crazy. Obviously, we don't have the budget to pay for a paramedic course. There could, we get creative with it. If somebody's a little bit short or whatever, we'll cover the difference. But again, it still comes with some sort of agreement that, you're going to stay loyal to us for a little while.
Do we have a certain number of paramedics?
It fluctuates. I think right now on staff on our roster, I think we have 4 or 5. But again, if it's a day when we only have an advanced and an EMT and we end up getting that call that needs a paramedic, that's when we have to call the Turner base. And they do the same to us. I think Stacey, I have a report for next week, but we did a lot of helping out last month.
Yeah. Everybody was really busy.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I think we helped Turner 5 times and Pace 3 times or something like that. So yeah, we were busy, especially the last day of the month. We helped out a lot.
And you gotta think, there's a limited number of paramedics in the state of Maine. Those paramedics all work for all these services. So Bob, you work for all 3 of those. So he's one paramedic with 3 services. And that's really what it comes down to is it may seem like there's a bunch of providers out there. There's not. There's a select group of providers that work at numerous services
I think in Maine, there's 900 paramedics right now
across the entire state.
total,
Wow.
and 5,600 EMS providers for the whole state.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And not all of them practice on a regular basis. Some of them may be licensed, but they're not actually practicing on a regular basis. They're just staying current with it. So, you got anything else you want to hit on, Stacy, that I didn't hit on?
No, I think everything's covered.
Do you guys have any questions? Do you have any questions? Nope. Hey, Adam, you snuck in. All right. Well, if that's the case, I'm good with Stacy. Adam just walked in, so actually he didn't just walk in, he's been here for a little while, I'm assuming. I'll move on to fire and then we'll jump into public works. And if you're all set, Stacy, you can jump off. You don't have to stay on the phone.
Thank you, Stacy.
Have a good trip, Stacy.
I will see you guys when I get back.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Oh, and then I was just unfamiliar. Do you know what SCBAs are?
Something breathing apparatus.
Thank you. Don't know. Yeah, don't know. I don't know all the EMS acronyms.
It's a self-contained breathing apparatus. Mask.
It was just one of the, it's a lot of.
Yes.
All right, so fire begins on page 6. And I'm gonna start off with reiterating, and Adam knows this, we've talked about it for 2 years, about correcting or developing a pay scale that properly reflects service. The minimum wage thing just isn't, you can't continue this into perpetuity. We've got 12. How many members do you have right now? But you've got, but some of them are union, aren't they?
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
That's not including, I think there's 15 total actors and there's 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So the 15, we've got, every one of them, with the exception of a couple, have full-time jobs. So, and then we've got obviously our per diem crew that is here providing coverage during the day. That's always been a different pay scale than the on-call guys. Like, if one of Adam's guys gets called in the middle of the night to a structure fire, he's making minimum wage. The day crew guy's making, depending on how long they've been there, $18.58 an hour or whatever. We're trying to rectify the way we pay based off of experience, training level, and certifications. So Adam gave me a number. I laid it out based off of the number of hours and estimated call hours. And he was right there with what I came up with dollar-wise. So my recommended pay scale is here on the sheet. But that, that may not be the final one. This was just a starting point for me to figure out whether or not the math was there. So either way, whether it was Adam coming up with a number or me laying it out by hour per, my estimations on everything, it came out to, I think I was off $350 from what Adam suggested. So with those increases, obviously that comes FICA and Medicare increases.
I would actually.
Yep.
Based on last annual year.
So I looked at the last 2 years. So I basically took the last 2 pay periods and the 2 pay periods before that and estimated out where we're going to be. Fire is similar to rescue, in my opinion. Adam can interject if not. It seems like the calls are increasing.
I was gonna ask if we see a trend.
Yeah, the trend is it's increasing, and some of the calls we're getting, which we discussed at our last select board meeting, centered around billing for certain things, and that's cost recovery aspect. Car accidents, traffic control, some of that stuff that we haven't even discussed as far as it needs to go before the residents for an ordinance review. But that was part of why we engaged in that conversation at our last meeting, because we are getting a lot of calls for silly accidents or you show up at a call, nobody's there, but the car's there. Things that are tying up resources.
Yeah.
And we do have a contract with Hartford. So we do provide coverage for a certain portion of Hartford, which is in the revenue line for fire. And that's where that comes from, which we're currently going through a renegotiation for an updated 3-year contract with them.
Yeah.
And then on the rescue side, we're doing the same thing with Sumner and Hartford.
So this increase, it accounts for the competitive pay, but it also is anticipating a bit of increased needs as well.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Like, you could actually look at this, like the 500 hours that I have listed for chief, it probably won't be 500 hours for the chief. But what I did was I took an average firefighter wage to determine it, because obviously not all of them are the chief.
Mhm.
So it's based off an average. If I actually went with the highest wage, obviously the budget would be totally different, but that's not how I build a budget. I build it based off of
Average wage.
more frontline guys than obviously upper level guys.
Mhm.
But I put the bulk of the hours in my estimate on the chief and the deputy chief, because really, the deputy chief, the captain, the lieutenants, they're the ones that are gonna be doing most of the administrative work. They're gonna be doing, those are the guys that tend to show up a lot. You know what I mean? Because that's their job. So that's why it seems like there's a lot less hours, or there's only 500 hours I have average for the average firefighter, but then I've got all these hours up here. there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that, you know, you don't see
Sure, yeah.
outside fire calls and accidents, so. And then obviously there's 2,600 per diem hours underneath that. That's our daytime coverage. Because we found out years ago that finding coverage during the day is one of the hardest things to do. We're lucky enough that we have a couple of guys in town that are in town. But you can't rely on that into perpetuity. So having a guy that can get the truck started, get it out the door, even if he gets it on the scene, the other guys can, you know, follow suit in another truck or whatever, but it's getting us there quicker. And I mean, let's face it, we get called from mutual aid to Sumner, we get called from mutual aid to Turner, Canton, whatever. It's not like we're restricted to Buckfield. So that's where the wage line increase came from. Gas and diesel stayed the same. Turnout gear I did increase because turnout gear has gone through the roof. One set of turnout gear is currently roughly,
About 47,
so
let's head to toe.
so $12,000 isn't really enough to do a full 3-set, you know, replacement. A helmet right now is. And then all this gear has expiration dates. And NFPA is getting stricter, and OSHA's getting involved and trying to change standards, and it's making it more and more difficult. So you can't send an interior firefighter into a burning building with gear that expired. It's not safe. It's against the standards, and we need to make sure that we're rotating that gear out.
Interior guys have their stadium show.
Tenure. And that's if it doesn't burn the call. We had a jacket that got, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. It happens. It protected him. That's good.
Yeah,
But, you know, if we lose a jacket, that's $1,200, $1,300.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Got it.
It's not like we don't file an insurance claim. Communication equipment's the same, tools and miscellaneous is the same, training I did increase, again, same thing. Training costs go up, these guys have required training they need to do. And even if it's not required, there's certain trainings that, you know, we want our guys to be able to do that, to make sure that they're as qualified as they can be. Membership's the same, I pulled out all the utilities. Only thing that stayed the same there was the internet for the 2 trucks. And then fire vehicle. I increased the fire vehicle budget line, or we increased the fire vehicle budget line by $7,000 because these trucks are old. They're getting older. They're good trucks, don't get me wrong, but they do have a shelf life as well. And as they get older, there's more repairs that need to be done. And we faced that quite a bit this year.
Mhm.
We've probably come, I'm pretty sure we've gone over that $35,000 line this year. And it's not anything we can prevent. Trucks break down, they're emergency vehicles, we gotta get them back on the road. So trying to anticipate a little bit more. We're doing better on the preventative maintenance side of things than we have in years past. And I think Adam has some numbers he wants to share. Just,
So I'm just.
are you just looking at?
That is, yeah, what we have and stuff like. I think I gave you that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, you gave me a copy. It's in the binder I got on my desk on there. So we've got, just to give everybody perspective, engine 3 is a 2003. Actually, I think it comes out as a 2004, but it's a 2004, so you're talking, where are we at?
NFPA standards 20 to 25 years of refurb or replace.
Yeah. So that one was a 2004 and our tanker is an 07.
Yep.
So both those trucks purchased within 3 years of each other have the same shelf life and are getting towards the end of their, you know, I'm not saying that absolutely at that deadline it has to be done, but the fact that we're that far into the life cycle,
Yeah.
the maintenance that they require is more.
Mhm.
So it's just a fact of life. You buy a pickup and you drive it for 20 years and it's going to cost you more at the end of its life. So these are very big pickups.
Service is expensive on firing.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like the shop. We all like to go about how much it costs to go to the repair shop and get a pickup or a car fixed. When you're working with heavy duty equipment, and we're fortunate enough, we have a guy that actually comes here and works on them. And he's quick, so you know he can get the services and stuff done without taking the trucks out of service for a significant amount of time. We send it to a place it could sit there for 3 weeks. I mean, we purchased the truck, the Quint. And it's been back to Greenwood, I don't know how many times, and it's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like, when it's a piece of equipment that has a lot of your stuff that, you're relying on, like your extrication equipment. That's not really a good thing, so. That requires them to remove everything from there and then figure out what to do with it. Usually that involves they have to put it on the floor in the station, and if they get a call, they gotta go and pick it up and put it on the utility or something else to get it to the call, which slows down response time. So just something to consider. Obviously, our Quint is a 2005, but we just went through a refurb, so the little kinks and stuff that we've fixed or changed on that. I think we probably need to do a light upgrade or light bar upgrade on that, right?
Light bar, and I would recommend maybe paint.
Yeah, because that's the one thing that we didn't pay for in the refurb was a repaint. But that truck should be good for many years to come. So again, I just want to get the other two trucks off the radar that, I had put together a proposed capital improvement or capital asset plan a while back. And in order for the town to get caught up in where we would need to be and how much we'd have to put aside every year, the town of Buckfield couldn't.
Yeah, it was brutal.
I mean, you'd be talking $1 million a year to plan for everything that we have. And it's just, so unfortunately, it turns into, we get to the point where we need it and then we finance it, or we finance it and partially subsidize it with money that we put away into reserve, occasionally. So the last few years, we haven't put any money into reserves. I think Adam's fire department capital asset reserve, I can't remember the specific name of it right now. It has somewhere in the ballpark of $70,000 to $80,000 in it. There isn't a recommendation for a reserve appropriation. I'm just going to mention it to the board that may be something you guys want to consider during the process. The only reserve appropriation that I had put in, and it wasn't intentional, it was just because I was working on that specific budget myself, was the municipal center, and I think it was a small, I think it was like $10,000, because I haven't heard anything about the windows, and it's something we gotta start budgeting for.
Yeah.
So I would say that for fire rescue, because we just discussed on that same situation, you may want to look at putting some money aside into that. To start planning for that stuff in the next 4 to 5 years, so this is gonna have to happen.
Also, when you look at that, I don't know what kind of funds we typically would put something like that into. Whether it would be a good investment account to get some money on it versus the pittance you get from the bank or savings account.
So we're limited to what we can invest in. So typically what we do is we either do CDs or we do money market. Obviously, the last couple of years, money market's been really good for us. When I first came here, the town of Buckfield was getting probably $10,000 a year in interest off of close to $2 million in the bank at any given time. And then last year, I believe, not looking at the trust funds, but our operating cash, what's in our sweep account and our checking account, I pretty much made my salary off of interest for the town. So the money market's been good, but obviously the market's starting to go the other direction, but still 3% is better than nothing. Borrowing at 7%.
Yeah.
We used to get loans at the town level for 1.5, and they're just not there anymore. And borrowing money is getting more and more expensive too. So
All right, it's on my list, reserve accounts.
I thought about that after I printed everything out. So fire. Adam, do you have anything else that I missed?
A couple small things, and you briefly spoke about earlier, the cost recovery, the billing for insurance companies. A lot of that is going to hopefully go toward capital improvement. So we don't have to try to hit the town all at one time for, a $700,000 fire truck. Every little bit obviously helps. And the smaller stuff from the utility down to the cascade system, there are grants out there that we have been pretty lucky on getting new grants for the SCBA, a $70,000 grant. So we didn't have to burden the town grant in for the Cascade system, which is another 40 to 50, but then again, it is a grant, it's not guaranteed, so it's just something you may be prepared. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the way I
Are
have.
there these matching grants?
So the rates we are putting in for are not matching grants, they're all 100% paid.
Okay,
The only matching grant we do is the main Forest Service grant, and that's a $3,500 grant. So this is a lot of our fire fall and extra portion gloves and stuff like that. Actually, so
as long as we had a plan for the match, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
it's
case
15, I mean, I know it's still $1,500.
Yeah,
It's $1,500.
yeah, but something, you know what I mean, like sometimes these come up and it's like, well,
We would if we had the budget to match.
Yeah, I would definitely.
so.
and with that said, I mean, that fire department capital asset, we're talking about trucks, but we've also, like he said, he's got a lot of other equipment and stuff that, you know, they need and stuff. The matching share could come out of some of that reserve funds too. So if it's a small match, I mean, you do have the funds there that the board could allocate that for the match without having to tax people out for it. But I do like the fact that the fire department does come to me with grant opportunities and, you know, inquire about them. And they are aware of the grant management policy, so they know that certain requirements to come to you guys and stuff. And, but yeah, no, I think the fire department does a really good job at trying to keep costs low.
Yeah.
This year was just with the repairs, it just,
Yeah, and they've been busy.
yeah, your call volume this year has been insane.
I mean, how many days did you spend out on South Pond?
I think there's 5 total.
Yeah, that was a big one.
We just had some really rough calls.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, the FD capital equipment purchase, that $10,000, that's to acquire those 2 SCBA's, self-contained breathing apparatus from West Barrett.
Yeah.
And then our host testing stuff, those costs have gone up. I noticed that. I paid last year's invoice this year by accident because I looked at the wrong invoice. And they were like, where's the rest of the money?
Not only that, because we put our benefit pros in service on.
Yeah. Which we had saved, you guys saved us a lot of money on the hose aspect of that too. We didn't have to buy. You know, we could have, you know, had to buy a lot of hose. They found creative ways to. So
Excellent.
overall, the fire department budget is an increase. A lot of it comes from maintenance and just restructuring those wages. Apparently I deleted out the 2023 survey for fire. I don't know why. These wages are actually, I would say, much lower than what the survey study said, but I'd have to double check to look. But I think it's better in line with where we should be.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I had all my questions answered under that section.
Do we supper if you want now?
Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
You too, Kathy, if you want, unless you want to participate and just listen. All right, let's get to Fort Preston, who I reminded today had to be here.
Yeah. Do you have anything else going on?
Well, he thought he was having dinner with his fiance or girlfriend. Girlfriend? Then I told him, no, you're not. I'm just kidding. All right, so Public Works, I kind of left that for later. Thank you, Adam. I left that for last, obviously, because there's Public Works Complex, there's the Public Works Department, there's summer roads, winter roads and everything. So Preston and I worked on this together. Obviously, this is Preston's first year as foreman, and my first year as the interim road commissioner. But I've been through enough now that, you know, I can see what it costs to do things even under different people. The roads are the roads and the costs are the costs. So as far as the Public Works Complex, pretty much flat. I mean, there's like a $500 increase. The $500 increase is just associated with heating fuel. Waste oil is great, but we don't always get enough, so we have to subsidize that with heating oil. And this year's been cold, so all I can do is base that off of this year. You know, last year was mileage, we didn't spend as much. This year was cold, next year it could be either or.
Yeah.
So that's where I came up with that increase on that one. Public Works wages, same thing, 2.5%. Last year, we did an adjustment on their wages to get them in line and get them more competitive. The one line you see the increase the most on is the road assistant. That's more than a 2.5 in the number that you see. The reason behind that, as well as the public works drivers, if you do the math and it comes up to more than that, is I adjusted salaries towards the end of this year. Not only to retain the guys that I have, but to also try and recruit individuals that we need for our one open position that we just can't seem to find anybody for. The pay scale for a plow driver right now for the town of Buckfield, depending on their experience, and if they have the CDL, is anywhere from 22 to 25 hours. That's in line with what the neighboring towns are paying, and anybody that works for municipality in public works could go work for a construction company and make double that. So I adjusted the salaries. So the increase was based off the adjustment salaries. So at the $25 an hour, the assistant foreman salary. Seasonal help increased a little bit. I just did that by 2.5%. Those are the guys that come in, they mow the lawns, weed whack, traffic control, shovel. You know, the guys that aren't actually plowing the roads or doing the road construction projects. I will say those individuals are important because less than 2 years ago, we did have DOT come by one of our work sites and we didn't have, what was it, dig safe?
Yes.
Dig safe, but we didn't have flaggers either. And that's something that's required. So the crew that we have right now, without that one other individual, technically isn't big enough to run a road, you know, a repair. So if we got to replace a culvert, I need 2 flaggers. I need the guy in the dump truck. I need the guy in the equipment, and you know, it's. But I also need to mow cemeteries, and I need to weed whack ball fields and all that other stuff. That if we stop to pull everybody off onto that road crew, now we're getting phone calls about why does the cemetery have 8-inch grass? So it's something that we have to juggle all the time. So those seasonal people are very important. Let's see, the road commissioner stipend didn't change. It's $2,400 a year. So it's like what, 40 something dollars. So we 20 something dollars. I don't know, I don't have to calculate it from me. Usually Peter figures it out for me. Overtime, I just adjusted based on the proposed COLAs. Retirement. It's currently budgeted for 3 employees. 3 employees are currently enrolled. I did that to keep the cost of the budget down. The true fact of the matter is if I do hire a 4th, I do hire that position and they elect to take main state retirement, there won't be enough money in there. And you can only hope that there's room here in budget to pay for that. Normally I would budget for 6 months of retirement or healthcare, you know, depending on if I had a position open. But it's been such a struggle to find somebody that I just figured keep it where it's at for right now. Health insurance, you can see that big increase. So whether the select board agrees with the recommendation I made or keeps it where it's at, I'd have to recalculate it. But that's the true cost of health insurance.
Yeah.
And that's based off the 3 that we currently have enrolled. Would it be fair? It's been asked, have you done an RFP or gotten prices on health insurance? No, I haven't. Not since I've been here. I've had too many things going on at once. This is through the Maine Municipal Employee Health Trust, and this is what municipalities use. Are there other options out there? Yes. Is the insurance as good? I don't know. It may be something worth exploring, at least just to see what else is out there. But currently what we have, this is what it costs. Like a Medicare employee benefits, that's all the same. I don't feel like that number's correct. I'll retally it. I'm just talking about the paid family medical leave. I'm looking at the number. It seems low, but I'll check before the next meeting. Oils and lubes, so that's, motor oil, that's any of the stuff that we have to use besides gas and diesel. That went up a little bit because the cost of that stuff's going up. Gas and diesel, I left the same. Uniforms, we used to have a uniform service, which was like $7,500 a year. We get rid of the uniform service. Now on an annual basis, we just buy them shirts, a pair of boots. And then I think in the winter, jackets we probably replace every couple of years, but it's cheaper to do that. They wash them, they take care of them, and then they get worn out, so that line's actually significantly less than what we've paid in years past. Special mobile equipment, that's anything we need to rent. If we need to rent a skid steer or anything like that, that's where that line comes out of. Tools and miscellaneous, that's varying things. I use this line we have hydraulic fittings, we have a hydraulic machine, we have hydraulic fittings. As those are used to replace hoses, which go bad all the time with the salt and the calcium, we restock those. That's what goes into this line. In another life, I sold hydraulics and not cheap. Other professional service, that's if I contract with somebody to come in to do a specific job or a specific task. And then public works trucks, this is what I hit on earlier. So the year prior to this, I think the budget line was somewhere in the ballpark of 35,000. This past year, we replaced a body on one of our trucks. That was $46,000. We have another truck that will most likely need a body, but I'm hoping we can patch it and repair it and get through another year or two before we have to approach that. So rather than wipe that whole body out of there, I said, why don't we take that money and fix the other trucks? So that's all true maintenance cost of what it's going to cost. We've got the Orange International that we have. That's got something going on with the electronics in the transmission. I want to send that out. I don't want these guys working on it. And when I send that out, it's going to cost. So that's going to be built into that. But then next winter, we will have a true backup truck. Or when we hire somebody, we will have a truck for them to actually utilize. We have one older truck that's an 05 Hemi. That should have been replaced years ago. That was the one we were going to ask to replace this year, but thought against it. We'll look at that next year. What else? Miscellaneous, we took miscellaneous out because miscellaneous was confusing. I mean, if it's for the trucks, it's for the trucks. Miscellaneous stuff.
Yep.
Sure. So overall, that line, it was a $30,000 increase. The $30,000 increase, mostly what wages, you got a little bit out of FICA, Medicare. Yeah. Oh, health insurance. It's primarily health insurance is what it came from.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, as I talk longer and longer, my head starts to spin.
Yeah.
My least favorite subject in school was math. So moving on, so that's the public works department. That's like wages and the basics aspect of it. And then we move on to summer roads. So summer roads, that's our plowing, that's our, fixing gravel roads, shoulders, ditch work, all that stuff. Bridging guardrails, you'll notice that went down. That's because last year we budgeted $16,000 to replace a guardrail on Darnett Road. Yep. Which we haven't done yet because the company hasn't called Preston back, so we're gonna follow up with them. They were supposed to do it in November, as well as the guardrails on the Drew Brook box culvert bridge, whatever you want to call it. We never budgeted for guardrails on that one. So that was budgeted for last year. So those two projects were $16,000. We backed that out and then just increase in any of the bridge or guardrail work that we need. Culverts, we're way over budget on culverts this year.
Yeah.
The culvert pricing is insane. Obviously, we had two culverts that we were fortunate enough to be included in the FEMA December 2023 storm. But those two culverts alone were $15,000. Just the plastic.
Right.
So Given they were big culverts, but the small ones aren't much cheaper either. Uh. Sidewalks, we put that in there for. Rental of sweeping. We've got a lot of dirt everywhere and we haven't done a very good job at sweeping over the last couple of years, but, if I had to put something in there, if we're gonna do that stuff, or even any minor repairs to the sidewalks, if there's a pothole or whatever, it's just included in there. Paint patch is expensive. All roads, we did increase all roads from 35 to 50. The last 2 years, I mean, I think last year we had to go to a special town meeting to appropriate more money because of the storms. The storms have, the rain and stuff. Cost of materials, everything's gone up. So again, that's anything from riprap to sand to gravel to coal patch. Coal patch is about $3,500 a load or something like that.
Yeah.
And let's face it, paving budget only gets so far. There's a lot of coal patching that needs to be done.
Yeah,
So if we're gonna do it, which everybody seems to want us to do, we gotta have the budget for it.
Absolutely.
Paving, based off of the road committee suggestions on the paving cycle that we're going on, I felt keeping the same budget was fair. If you're looking at areas, you kind of have to take a look at the budget and go, if we were to cut something, what would make the biggest impact? I'm not saying cut paving out, but to give you a perspective on an estimate as far as mill rate, if you were to wipe out the entire paving line, it would save $3 per thousand in our taxes. But our roads are crap and there's roads that need to be fixed. And in order to fix the next roads, we need to continue to finish the roads that were on that schedule. So that just gives you kind of an idea of what that amount of money does to the overall taxes. So I didn't adjust it, I didn't increase it, I didn't decrease it. Preston and I felt it was where it needed to be. The paving prices have been pretty steady. Fortunately, we thought they were going to continue to rise, but they pretty much stayed flat. Projects that were supposed to happen last fall, they're going to happen this summer, came in right at that 470. And the roads that we have planned for next fiscal year, about the same.
Do you know which those are off the top of your head?
It's the rest of Paris Hill Road up to the Paris line and then half of Rock School Road.
Okay,
So from Shed Hollow down to Dartmouth.
Yeah, we've after this spring, when last year's project gets done, the only stretch of Paris Hill that remains to be undone is that bad stretch right at the town line.
yeah,
Which the town of Paris did all theirs, and then you come into Buckfield and it's a landmine. So that'll complete Paris Hill, that'll be done, and then the plan was North Buckfield. And then there's other roads down here that will need to be addressed. But this was all part of the schedule that we've been sticking with. So if we jump away from this to that, we're not solving anything. We put Band-Aids on stuff.
yeah,
When we go to repair something, our intent is do the through roads first, which Paris Hill is the secondary, it's the secondary through road when you're not taking street kid. We finished East Buckfield and Bear Pond Road. I mean, you could say Sodom Road's a through road, but it's a dirt road. That road needs some grading. We put a lot of gravel into that road last year. We did a lot of work on it. The paved portion of it needs work, but it's not the worst road in Buckfield. I know I've received emails about it. There's worse roads in Buckfield.
Yeah.
So unless the road committee makes a different recommendation, board comes in and says, no, we're not doing that road. I think we're just sticking with the plan of completing the projects we started. I'd rather have some good roads than have a bunch of 1 mile stretches of good road surrounded by crap. So I mean, the alternative was discussed a couple years ago, bonding out $2 million and paying on it over the course of 30 years, but it wasn't very favored. I mean, personally, I don't really favor it because it's like asking our kids to pay for something that we get to enjoy and now they get to benefit, now they get to pay the tab on it. But that's really the only way you're gonna get a significant amount of road done is to borrow a lot of money.
Did we figure out what the cost per mile was, David? I know it's outrageous. Helps me like put it in.
Yeah.
So Yeah, if I pull the quotes we got from last year, or the bids from last year, I could probably get a better perspective. That stretch on Paris Hill that was supposed to be done last year, that's what, 1 point.
Mile, close to a mile and a half. Yeah.
So that was like a mile and a half, and then the stretch from the top of High Street to just beyond the cemetery is what, another mile? So 2.5 miles was 470,000.
There it is.
And again, I'm gonna be honest. In the future, as we approach these issues, I don't think it's an off the wall idea to look at some of these not so heavily trafficked roads and say they're really, really bad. It might be best to reclaim that road and just leave it gravel until we can afford it to do it right. It'll give time for the road to settle. We can dig out any of the stuff that's there. We can grade it. I'd rather ride slow on a nice gravel road than hit potholes every 5 feet. That's just my opinion.
Feel the same way. And I have like friends who live in Hartford who live on dirt roads. And half the time I'm like, this road feels better than darn it. I'd rather, have to keep regrading
And
than.
if it washes out, we come in and we rebuild it relatively quick, as opposed to now you gotta get a paving crew in there to come, and then just paving to dirt to paving, it's, well, Paris Hill, nightmare.
The only bad part when
Yeah,
you get into this form of plowing and then you get ruts.
and you get mud and,
But
For sure, for sure.
the other
Yeah.
parts of the year,
Yeah.
we little anecdote. I had my driveway redone 2 years ago by Spencer.
Yeah.
And when they came in, they said, yeah, you were the last driveway we put up for this year. So we make a lot more money on roads than we do on driveway.
Fair.
yeah. So,
Head south toward Charlie.
Yeah.
so all in, if you look at summer roads versus last year, it's actually only an $11,000 increase.
Mhm.
Um, once you guys get to that meeting on the 11th and you start talking about this a little bit more, or you get some input from people, if their opinions are different on this paving, I mean, you can incorporate that, but so far it's been working. We've been able to do a couple really well. When this is done this spring, we will have been able to do a couple really good stretches of much needed roads. In his defense, they went on and did all that, digging up culverts and stuff with the good intention of this was going to be done by November of last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a time frame that.
It kept moving.
Oh, no.
Month later.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we never would have tore those culverts up. Well, some of them we may have had to, but we never would have touched those had we known that we would have had to wait all winter long, because it's done a number on our plows too.
Yes.
The stretch, the piece in front of Priscilla Bennett's house that we dumped cold patch in on one of the coldest days we freaking had, and the cold patch wasn't spreading and he was trying to do whatever. It's essentially a speed bump now, and I've gotten a lot of complaints about it, but we got complaints when it was gravel and it was too much of a hole. I didn't see it was hard for me to pay Spencer to pave over our cuts to turn around and tear it up 6 months later. And it just didn't seem like a good use of taxpayer funds. So I apologize. The roads are the way that they are, but
we do what we can, right?
No, and I remember the agreement being that they would be taking care of that in the fall.
Yeah, because I went in a rush,
Right.
almost on the deadline,
Yeah.
changed all the culverts and then.
Yeah. So.
So hopefully we'll address that in future RFPs,
Mhm.
as far as this work will be done by this date, or X, you'll pay for any, paving over cuts or whatever. We gotta do something. Of course, that might increase the initial cost, but I can't ask the taxpayers to pay for the same repair twice. That had nothing to do with us. Then in Spencer's defense, they use a subcontractor for the reclaim and we wanted the road reclaim. I still say it was a better bet to wait than to just do a little grind and go over what's there, because you're just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
Winter roads, same exact amount. That's basically our 3-year, our contract for sand and gravel. We haven't gone over our 3,200 yards of sand yet. We're getting close to needing some more, but we still have 700 yards that we could get, if need be, that we've budgeted for. So I feel comfortable where we are. Salt's gonna be close this year. we've used a lot of salt. I have talked to the guys about. So if anybody wants to complain about the roads not being bared out, I have asked the guys not to use as much salt all the time because we are burning through it. And it's just, if we're putting it down 4 times in a storm, all we're doing is plowing it back up.
Salt's expensive.
So
Very expensive.
our sand is already mixed with some salt. We hit it for the first couple hours of the storm. Once we're going through the cleanup, we'll really salt it. Unless it's extremely slippery, and then, certain areas of town, we will hit it, but we have used a lot of salt.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're struggling to keep salt. So if we use it all and they can't get it to us,
Yep.
that's something we need to think of too. So yeah, that stayed the same. Cemeteries, we stayed the same there too. I basically want these guys to put a little material into the roads, fix some of the fences that are broken, paint some of the fences that are broken, add some loam where it's really, really sandy because it's just really, really bad in some spots. Some of the older plots have starting to sunk down, which do a number on our zero turns. So if we can fill those up, and reseed them, it makes things a lot better. And then sandblasting our mowing blades, you mow the cemetery once and we're replacing blades again, that gets expensive. So I would like to see some work there. Some of the fences out in East Buckfield and smaller cemeteries, just making sure that those things are taken care of so that people see us, taking care of them. And yeah, that's basically the public works aspect of it. Anybody has any questions on that, they can go ahead and ask, and we'll move into solid waste.
Yeah, I'll ask you the same sort of thing I asked Kathy, like, are there any like kind of wish list items or like things you feel like you really had to compromise on to keep this budget like, relatively reined in? Are you feeling good about this all? Any red, orange, yellow flags raising for you with the equipment
Be
you?
honest with her.
Yes.
Be honest. Like to see another guy there
Yep.
helping out.
Mhm.
The body on the truck I drive is getting pretty rough shape.
Yep.
We don't have a spare truck right now,
Mhm.
and most of the time it's only doing 2 trucks are doing most of the town.
Yeah.
We got 2 trucks, 2 pickups.
Mhm.
I'm doing all in North Buckfield, 140 olds on the road. I can't get around quick enough. People are calling me, why haven't I seen a plow truck in 4 hours? I'm
Mhm.
still on the snow. I'm back around. No, the other trucks doing all of East Buckfield and
Mhm.
including North itself, 124, and
Yeah.
struggle, we're struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing is another truck
Yeah, at some point,
at some point.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is all, even if it's gonna happen, not that I want it to happen 5 years from now, but even if it happens 5 years from now, smart for us to start planning now.
I think the key thing that I'm taking from him, and I'm not speaking for him, just my interpretation. Finding a way to get that other driver, right?
Yes.
So we're trying to get to a point where we are attractive to another
Mhm.
experienced operator.
Yeah.
If we get the operator, we have the trucks. We just need to fix the truck.
Yes.
So right now, I had asked them to pull it out and wait till spring. Primarily because if I don't have a man to put in it, well, good. I mean, it is good if one of their trucks goes down, but if one of their trucks goes down, they can't go plow. They got to fix the other truck. So you get into that situation where at the storm we had last Thursday, I had one guy plowing 44 miles of road by himself. And it was probably the worst storm for complaints. I didn't see a plow truck till 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mhm.
He was out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you
So
afford to duplicate him?
being sweetie prayer for him.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's where my target has been since I've been here. Yes, it costs money to keep people, having people here, offering them the basic benefits. I mean, because we don't offer a lot of things that other towns, that other employers do.
Yeah.
But health insurance, their retirement, and
Livable wage.
a livable wage
Yeah.
is key to getting somebody in the front door. And we've been competing against that for so long.
Mhm.
You know, we were super lucky with rescue and the amount of dedicated people we had that were willing to come here when we lost a lot of people, and they're still here. And we got lucky there. And that's why I'm trying to make sure that we keep what we have. And when we have holes, we attract, we need. Because let's face it, if we lose the guys we got, there's nobody in the backup. I'm not, you got the plow truck, I'm sorry. I'm not, not plowing the road.
I know
I love you, but I'm not doing it.
making some changes to, we're looking to make some changes to the town share of health insurance, but beyond that, to, you know, look competitive, to look attractive, have we considered like sign-on bonuses? Have we considered raising the wages as a whole as well? I would want to see if we're raising wages for a new guy to come on. I would like to see your wages raised to match too, and keep it that way.
So keeping up with that increase in wages
Mhm.
and trying to keep the budgets flat for the last 3 years, I have basically asked for what I needed. I haven't asked for anything extra.
Mm.
The reason we come in under budget the last couple of years is because of not having people. So that's why I made the decision to adjust the wages for public works, because $20 an hour to plow the roads and to, you know, deal with all the stuff that they have to deal with. You can go manage a McDonald's for more than that. So I haven't asked for that extra, so there hasn't been wiggle room to offer those solutions. And basically what I had left over in the budget this year went to making sure that they were taken care of. And so that I could put out the job and not get laughed at when I tell them, well, this is what the starting pay is.
Yeah.
And by the way, our health insurance is $332 a week.
Yep.
So do the math, you make $20 an hour, work 40 hours, and your health insurance is $332 a week. How much do you bring home?
Yeah,
Robbery. For the lot.
yeah. And tax.
Mm-hmm.
The environment is key too, right? So like, if the folks are nice to you and call you up and say, geez, thanks for coming plow my road.
Would be nice, yeah.
You know, you used to go up in the driveway with a,
With coffee and
no. What, where to get the guy?
oh no. Can't do that no more.
Yeah.
So yeah, that covers the bulk of public works. Public works is, you know, when you combine all those aspects together, is one of the biggest costs of the town. But I mean, when it comes to a municipality and a town, the roads, the infrastructure, that's the bulk of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's followed up by public safety. I mean, it is what it is. People get hurt, fires start. We need people to make sure that they show up. The other thing that we absolutely need is a place to put our trash. I did hit on it at the beginning. The transfer station attendants, I proposed the 2.5% COLA increases I need with everybody else. The transfer station supervisor, the reason that's in there is because Sumner has skin in that game. And they should share in the cost of having somebody that manages that facility. That's Preston. Obviously, the town pays his salary, but that stipend goes to him. So 35% of that is funded by the operations budget that Sumner pays. So they are in essence paying a share of you know what it's costing, a couple hours that he spends dealing with calling for pickups, dealing with trucks broken down, shoveling out the pit when they can't get down there because the water's not draining, all that stuff that he has to deal with. Which can be quite a bit. I mean, just getting in touch with some of the people that need to pick up our sheetrock and everything else, it can be frustrating. So that's what that line is, hasn't changed since last year. The FICA and everything is associated with those increases. Gas and diesel is the same. The big increase, insurance, I haven't hit on it on my end. I received an email from the insurance agency and they were happy to report that they were looking at only a 12% increase to premiums.
Wonderful.
So I budgeted for 12.5. So that's where the 1,800, because I do separate their share of insurance out because Sumner needs to pay their share, so. That's the only department that is separated out. The waste and recycling, so that's everything from hauling, disposal fees. And all that. I tried to break it down as best I could. I can tell you I didn't factor in I didn't factor in the household hazardous waste share, which is $2,000, but it should, give or take, I had budgeted for an increase of what, 2.5% in waste disposal increase. I think we'll be fine if we don't have the $2,000 in there. But I did break it down a lot differently than I did. I gave you the actuals. We got rid of 1,070 tons of mainstream waste at $47 a ton. That doesn't include the $154 per pull or the $15.40 per fuel surcharge for each pull, but that's the actual cost of main waste. OBW, we got rid of 427.5 tons at $175 a ton. I put that's actually the current rate right now, but last year it was 155, but I budgeted it based off of the current rates. And then looking at years past, I just estimated for a 2.5% increase in disposal. It just seems to be where we're at. There's not like a flat line. It just seems like the number grows a little bit. So that's what I came up with. So for those increases, 51,000 for mainstream waste, OBW 76,000, and then the hauling and everything is built into the Archie's estimate, which I put roughly at 72,000. This year, we haven't quite paid that, but Archie's was just sold out or bought up. I talked to the owner. They're planning big changes as far as getting updated trucks, new bins, stuff like that. And when I hear that, I hear prices are going to increase. So I haven't been told of an increase. They're still charging us the usual, but I'm trying to be careful and anticipate if it is. And I would say I'm 90% sure that eventually it's going to happen. Shingles and sheetrock. I based all these numbers off of what we're currently getting rid of and prior years actual invoices. So all these numbers are tied up in stuff that we've already done. So that's where I get the 224,384, which is an increase from $160,000 this year. It is what it is.
Mhm.
We get rid of a lot of trash. And a lot of stuff, and the fact that we're not charging for anything, that cost falls on us. So,
Right, and there's no one there to really police it either.
I was gonna say, cause happy to address all this in upcoming changes to the solid waste protocol, but at the end of the day, it's like,
who's gonna police it?
how are we gonna? So,
Yeah, and the last thing I want is guys that are working out at transfer station.
Yeah, they don't have time.
Taking cash and having to how do you account for that?
yeah,
So, and you can't expect, this gentleman to come into the town office on Friday afternoon because he wants to get rid of a refrigerator and buy a ticket. So I don't know what that looks like, and I'm hoping that we can all figure it out.
Tell you what, where I used to live, that's the way you did it. You come home, you bought it, $15. And you put the sticker on the side of the refrigerator when you took it to the transfer station.
Yeah,
I think there's options for us out there that we can explore. We just got to plan it, figure it out. Unfortunately, as we're sitting here discussing it, they just seem to keep increasing the prices. I will say, $47 a ton for mainstream waste is good. The town of Buckfield got involved in MWAC and MWE years ago. Towns that are not a part of that are paying close to $100. We are currently paying the same amount per ton that the town of Buckfield was paying in 1990.
it's big rate.
And in 1990, before MWAC was formed, it went from $47 a ton to $75 a ton. So the only thing that we still pay for that is the same price as what we paid in 1990 is keep rid of our trash. Next year it'll be higher.
Balance. Wow, that's wild.
But I thought that was kind of cool. I was going through the annual town reports looking for something
Yeah.
that popped up. I was like, that's insane. But I think, were we still using landfills in the 90s?
yeah.
That's not bad. Oh, wow, what we were doing with our waste in the 90s. Yeah.
So I think that was why it was so expensive back then. Uh, but I think unfortunately, the reason we see increases in the disposable is everything is disposable now. You know, you go out, you buy a new TV, kid smacks it. Whatever, throw it in the trash and buy another one. Right.
Same.
We emptied out the electronics, what, 1 week, and within 2 weeks, that entire room, we had 4 or 5 full coffins of TVs and monitors. We paid for all that.
Also, do we? Refrigerators, freezers, like those kinds of things, like
I can go.
how much does 3,000? Like how many refrigerators do you get, I guess, I don't.
So trying to remember, $10 a unit.
I think so.
So it's like 300, and that seems like a high number, but I'll tell you what. We probably have between the air conditioners, again, another disposable item that everybody disposes of. That lasts a year or two, that counts as one. So we probably have close to 100 refrigerators and air conditioners sitting at the transfer station right now. We just got rid of 60 or 70.
And we think annually, it's like the same amount, 300 every year, people are just never keeping refrigerators.
It's nuts.
Okay,
I don't know where all the refrigerators are coming from, but
I'm saying they don't last any year.
It's made to last.
I mean, I bought my house in 2018, and to be honest with you, my dishwasher is crap to bed. It was brand new. My washer and dryer, I replaced both of them. I mean, 8 years. Remember the refrigerator you bought in 1960 that's still in your basement? Yeah.
Yeah,
not for that anymore. Throw it. Yeah.
In the 90s, you'd call the Maytag guy and he'd come fix your refrigerator.
Nineties, they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, because they'll show up and they'll say it's not worth fixing. Because it costs more to fix it than it does to just buy another one.
unless you YouTube it like me.
That's a wonderful.
Yeah. Are you refrigerant certified? So yeah, I could pull the numbers, like right now, we've got an accumulation because we were using one person. We had actually found somebody that was actually paying us to dispose of them because he drained the refrigerants and then we let him take the air conditioners because he can take the metals and stuff. All we do is throw them in the metal bin and we get pennies on the dollar for it. So that worked out for a year and we couldn't get in touch with him, had to go back to the other provider that does charge us to get rid of them. So
For $10, like.
yeah. And again, that hasn't increased in time ever, so who knows? That could go up to 15.
Gonna be, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Kathy.
So other than that, the only other increase, which I think most people are aware of it, the phone, fax, and internet went from $480 to $2,000 a year because I did, after the second break-in, put security cameras at the transfer station, something I thought we never needed. But the amount of damage that they were causing was getting excessive and you need the internet to be able to back it up offsite because the first time we didn't have the backup set up and somebody stole the DVR. So we didn't get footage, but we fortunately did find it. But it was fast.
Okay.
So if it's on site, it's not as effective as I need to be able to access it if I get an alarm and know that something's going on because it takes me too long to get down there. And the sheriff's department will get there after me. So
I know we were having, at least we had one incident where someone was just dumping outside the gate. Do the cameras extend that far? Are they able to catch people who are just dumping waste outside?
yep, the one that's closest to the compactor office, if anybody dumps something outside the gate now, we will be able to see them. I feel like since I've been here, all I've done is just buy cameras and put them up. Something happened that required it.
Yeah. So somebody broke in and just did damage to the center, or were they trying to steal the refrigerators?
Wants to steal the refrigerator. No, so the first break-in, they stole returnables. Like, there's not a lot there, like, but people will drop their returnables off. They stole maybe $100 worth of returnables, but in the process, they broke the overhead door, they bent both the rails, they kicked in 2 other doors. So you start adding up all these repairs and it's ridiculous.
So mostly property damage.
Yep, and then the follow-up was, I think it might have been the same people coming to do it again, and then when they showed up. They realized we had cameras, so they took the DVR and then tossed it. And we haven't had a problem since. So I think the cameras rectified themselves, but the minute I stop using them, something will happen. So I'd rather be safe than sorry and maintain it. Plus the safety thing, right? I mean, we've had some incidences there. So if somebody gets hurt, we have the footage. It's crazy we need it in today's society.
Field surveillance state. No, it is truly crazy what people will do for missing returnables. I would have sooner given them $100 out of my own pocket, have them incur those costs for the town.
And with that said, if people will pull over in front of the transfer station and walk between the trees and throw trash out, and they're not always from Buckfield. Like the fence doesn't extend the full length, so the cameras give us that, if something happens on a day that we're not open, like we can identify that and trespass them. And the sheriff's department has been good about that. If we have instances, they do look into it and they've been a good partner.
You've checked to make sure that the camera can actually pick up their license plate number and stuff. Okay.
Depends on the day and the weather and whether or not there's spiders on it, but
Hey, better than some places, because sometimes I see security footage and I'm like, honestly, what was the point of you even paying for this camera? I can't see
yeah,
anything distinguishable on.
stuff you see on CSI where they can take a green image and then make it clear, that doesn't exist.
Where
Okay, so I guess that takes care of that. That's the number that I have provided Sumner. So they're aware of the increase. I'm not even gonna go over the school and county tax again. I just budgeted a 5% increase. I, again, would encourage people to watch those meetings. We'll jump over to general government.
do we still have a sidewalk machine?
We do, but it's not,
Not up.
it needs work.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, man. Needs all new tires. We've done a bunch of work to it. We don't have the drive shaft for the,
We put more money into it than.
yeah, essentially we've put more money into it and we're still not where it needs to be. So I had the guys pull it out at like right before winter. And, that is one of those things we're gonna explore. Whether it's worth it or not, in the next fiscal year. If not, then it's gonna require us renting equipment to maintain sidewalks when we do it, but I will tell you, from this year. That's what we have done, and it has just resulted in as many complaints, if not more, than when we didn't clean the sidewalk. In the first place.
So elaborate.
Snows in my yard, snows in my walkway, snows, like the things that I have a driveway in the middle of rural Buckfield, and when I clean my driveway and the plow truck goes and pushes all the snow in there, it is what it is, I gotta clean it up, but it's. You touched my grass, or like you tore up my grass, you did this, you did that, again, it's just all, I'm not saying it's baseless, but. Last year it was we weren't doing them quick enough,
Mhm.
this year it's. Why would you do that? We don't have the proper piece of equipment. We're using a skid steer without a snow blower.
And most of the time I use the wing of the truck,
Mhm. Yeah.
But again, when he's winging it, he's just winging it in their yard. So it's.
And you got many houses that are abutted against the sidewalk too, right?
He is too.
And that. There's nowhere to go with it.
Right.
Push it in the road, they push it up.
I think it's
Yeah.
great having the sidewalks. And I just don't know as if I was here when they made the agreement that the town would take on the responsibility of maintaining them. If I would have supported that decision.
Yeah.
It's a small town, a small budget, small crew. It probably would have been best to have anybody with a property on the road to be like, yeah, I want a sidewalk, so I'll take care of my stretch of the sidewalk or whatever, but. We're doing the best we can with what we got. He didn't hit on it, but in subsequent years, I would highly recommend that the town look at purchasing the right piece of equipment for that, not a $6,000 20-year-old machine. I think Paris currently uses a Bobcat with a snow blower attachment on it, and it's relatively new, but you're talking. It's about 20 grand.
Right, for the,
Yeah, that's a nice machine. It runs on purple too.
No, does it?
I think so, but it's pretty clever, but.
But you get what I'm saying, you know, you can angle out the snow to go to a different spot, like when you're using a skid steer with just a bucket and you're full, you gotta dump it where you gotta dump it, and if that happens to be somebody's walkway that just got shoveled out, we're not doing it on purpose. There's, you know, because if we go in there and start scooping it up, now we're tearing up your lawn, we're tearing up your walkway, or, you know, and that's not what we're trying to do, we're just trying to make the sidewalks passable for pedestrians.
Right.
So. That's just my take on that, but we do have the sidewalk machine, it needs a lot more work, I don't know how much it's gonna cost. It's had a motor replacement, but it was replaced with a motor for generator.
Yeah, we took the old motor, we took a Ford motor out, the John Deere motor,
Mhm.
had it built around mounts and well up the frame,
Yeah,
brackets, everything.
right.
We just build everything.
Mhm.
So we really don't even know 100% if once it gets out there. If it'll do what we want it to do, you know what I mean, power wise, we don't know if it's got the right power.
Yeah,
So it's one of those things, it's like. Do you fold or do you just keep on chasing it? So we'll take a look at it when it's. Warmer weather and try and kind of get a better idea, maybe get a second opinion. But it's a 30-year-old piece of equipment.
Yeah.
We thought it'd be good for us. I mean, we only needed 1 year out of it to get our, you know, to basically get our money back, because that's what we were paying to rent the old equipment that is no longer available. And we made it through one store. So
So just from a. Outsider stand view, if somebody lives outside of the downtown areas, right now, the only places we have sidewalks. Is here,
here in High Street, yeah, but yeah, center town.
center town, so. The bulk, there's a whole bunch of us outside of town that have. Get no value out of any piece of machinery in here,
For sure.
so. Personally, I wouldn't be opposed to, going back to what it used to be, where if you have a sidewalk, you're responsible for it, it's on your property. Right.
and that would require an ordinance in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now with that said, in the defense of the equipment, if it wasn't just a sidewalk plow like what we currently have. That skid steer could serve numerous purposes in town, especially on road work. We have the excavator, but the excavator. There's certain areas where a skid steer or a bobcat or something would be a good tool that we don't have, as opposed to going and paying $1,000 every time we got to rent one. So, I mean, long term, if it actually lasted and we didn't buy a 30-year piece of equipment, a 30-year-old piece of equipment that actually, you know, had a life, it would make sense for the town, that could benefit you or could benefit other parts of town.
Yeah.
But I personally wouldn't recommend going out and buying just a piece of equipment solely for doing a mile and a half of sidewalks. It just doesn't.
This piece of equipment we're currently having issues with is specifically for like.
Yeah, it's a
No
sidewalk.
other purpose.
That's all it is.
For that.
But again, we paid $6,000 for it used, thinking, well, we paid $6,000 for rental equipment, and we had our hands tied because the one we were renting, we literally were told right before winter, sorry, it's not available. We're not renting it anymore. And I think it was an insurance thing, even though we insured it. I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah, a highly specific piece of equipment like that is worth the back for the buck.
I completely agree with you. I think it would be, if we were going to explore replacing it, it would be in our best interest to get something that we can get far more use out of than just, yeah, totally agree.
well, if we buy a piece of equipment, I want it to be something that's multi-purpose. It's got more than one function.
They use it all year round.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, if
I mean-
we were in, Norway, somewhere where there are sidewalks extending through a huge chunk of town, like sure, a sidewalk specific piece of equipment would make sense, but for our small town, I agree, I don't think a single use piece of equipment makes much sense, especially with the limited amount of sidewalks we have.
Sweeping, that's one of the things we rent out every year.
Mhm.
And sometimes we have to rent it more than once because we'll sweep and then it'll snow and then we'll sand and we'll have to sweep again. But, that's one of the complaints that I've received here since I've been here was, certain areas if something happens and there's a lot of sand, or the only option we have is to go rent a piece of equipment to clean that up. They just want us to go out there and sweep it up. It's not, you can't just go out there with a broom, say there's a lot of sand there, right? A skid steer with a sweeper attachment, you could get a lot of stuff swept with that. I'm not saying you do full roads all the time, but if there's a big accumulation of sand from a washout or something, you could clear that up without, that's just one example. We dig enough holes that we could make a use for it.
Answers all my questions.
All right. Anybody else's burning toes?
Mostly the
Getting there,
shares.
yeah.
You can keep supper now if you'd like. I can do the rest by myself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Girlfriend left you.
That's it.
All right. So Jeff Harriman. Can you give me like 1 second?
I'm
Take a 1 minute break.
Yeah, take a short recess. I can get on myself.
That.
I just wish it had more people.
Very sad.
I'm Bob. Apparently you knew this area, you was been here 3 years. Five.
On the same.
I was gonna ask you why the sink just yelled at me. Big moments, yeah, that was me washing my hands.
Yeah, it happens every day.
Cool.
Really cool when you're alone in the building by yourself.
Yeah, I was terrified. My family just reminded me, have you been fielding any calls about solar pumps?
Only the two.
That's good.
All right, so let's move into admin. So administration, as far as the wages, like I said, I've gone and I've hit what I believe to be the 50th percentile or in that ballpark. You can actually see the numbers. They're very close to where they were in 2023. So all I've proposed for wage increases was the 2.5%. I think it was. Code enforcement, LPI, and E911. So that would be our code enforcement officer. He's also our local plumbing inspector and our E911 addressing officer. I've been fielding a lot of complaints about junkyards. We've discussed this in meetings. We've talked about it with the potential of ordinance development. If we're gonna pursue legal action against them, it's gonna require a lot of legwork by the code enforcement officer. Whether that's through the development of an ordinance that he can enforce locally, or whether that's having to pursue the more stricter standards of the state statute and getting everything that the attorney needs. That's gonna require site visits, pictures, all that stuff. Our current code enforcement officer, Kingston, has not asked for nor received a pay increase in 2 years. No, he's been here since John Andrews was here.
Okay.
So he's made the same $22 an hour since he's been here. So I think there should be a potential for, a slight pay increase there, but also the number of additional hours that may be required if we pursue more of these. There's obviously plenty of them in town.
Yeah.
So that's why I increased that wage basically by $5,000. You'll see later on, that also plays into the legal aspect of it. I think our current legal budget, $6,000 a year. That's not enough to do anything with really. Elected officials stayed the same. Ballot clerks, I kept the same, even though minimum wage went up because we didn't expend the full amount, so I think we're good there.
But you anticipate that perhaps next year's budget, we'll have to just raise that a little bit to,
Is there another minimum wage increase next year?
no, sorry, I just wasn't sure if you meant like past budget would
I
pay for it this year, but the next year, do you think we'll?
Well, now that we've gone to the, and we've kind of mastered the whole getting the ballot printed
Mhm.
and able to be scanned into the machines, we've been able to reduce the labor costs associated with that, because we used to have to sit here till 6 a.m.
Yeah,
So I'm paying all these people, even if it's minimum wage, until 6 a.m.
Yeah.
to count ballots. And we've been able to streamline that. So I think right now, if we make it through, it's kind of hard to look at this year's numbers because we had multiple elections. But I felt comfortable leaving it there just to kind of see where we're at. And then I can gauge, I've only been through one presidential election and now we're in an off cycle. And then next year there'll be a midterm. So I try to keep it stable so it's not just doing this all the time. And if it's working, then I think it's where it should be. The retirement, Main State retirement, that is the share of the 3 employees that are here. We did hire a new deputy. She did opt into it. So that's the increase on that one. The health insurance, we've discussed that in numerous departments. Again, you all can discuss that in your meeting on whether or not you want to change that policy or stay with the existing one if we have to. FICA went up slightly, Medicare slightly. Again, all costs associated with wage increases.
Right.
IRS mileage rate increased this year from 68 cents to 70 cents. So I increased it by $50.
Yeah.
That's basically any training we do. Most of it's in Augusta. Some of it's in Portland.
Mhm.
Every time I meet with the attorney, it's a lot cheaper for you to pay my mileage than it is to pay the attorney.
Yeah,
So I drive to him.
good, thank you.
And then any meetings that I attend, on the town's behalf, AvCog, stuff like that, that's included in there. Other employee benefits, again, my contract, you guys pay for my dental coverage, which isn't much, but it's part of that, as well as the gift card aspects, which isn't much. And then I incorporated the paid family medical leave. Supplies, I reduced that office supply line by 1,000. Postage, I probably should have gone up on this, but I left it where it is. The bulk of our postage fees comes from not tax bills, sorry, comes from 30-day notices, lien notices. Those all have to be sent out certified. I don't know if anybody's been tracking the USPS, but That's a rate that just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. And depending on the year, if we have a lot of defaults or late payers or whatever, we may have 150 of those certified letters. But that's times, you've got the initial 30-day, you've got the actual lien notices, and then on the tail end, you also have the ones we have to send the follow-up, the 30 to 45-day pre-foreclosure letters. Those all have to be sent out certified, so at $10 a pop, they add up real quick.
So you say you maybe should have increased that line. How much would you have increased it by?
I'll look at what we spent this year and then bring it to the meeting on Thursday. Just maybe it's good. Again, I did this budget. I mean, I printed this out on the 12th of February, so I can't remember where I was looking.
Yeah, no worries.
Office equipment I reduced by 2,500. I mean, I'm not buying computers every year. I have replaced. My computer was replaced before I came here. The deputy clerk's computer the clerk's computer has been replaced. The assessor's computer, which was running on Windows 7, has been replaced. And I just replaced the deputy clerk's computer. So we should be good for 3 or 4 years, depending on, but. So I didn't think we needed that much on the office side of things. That's usually where I take like printer ink and stuff like that too. Some of our printer ink's crazy. I just replaced all the ink for the one in the assessment office. It was like $1,000 to replace all the colors. Town report's $1,100. It's about what I've paid the last couple of years. Basically, I generate it in-house and then I go to grassroots and I have them print it. Last year I printed off just enough. This year I'll probably print off a few more, but I think I was under budget on that I say this year. Last year's before June. I think we'll be fine there. Election supplies, I went up a little bit because we print the ballots and I anticipate cost increases associated with that.
Yep.
And we had 1,200 people show up for the presidential election. Maybe more people will be involved in, local stuff too. Who knows?
That'd be great.
Dues and membership, that increased. AvCog went up this year. I'm on the executive committee for AvCog. It was a matter of, it was time for the dues to go up. And Buckfield share just happened to go up a little bit. MMA's went up a little bit. Professional memberships, those are things like the Maine Town City Managers Association or the Maine Town City Clerks Association. They're all good resources for the clerks, especially where we have limited resources for training and stuff. They've got listservs and they offer training. So any of the training we go to, like our 2 clerks are part of MTCCA. If there's a training that they're putting on, like if we're a non-member, it costs us double the price. So it may be a $40 training for us, but it's $80 if you're not a member, and it's like $30 a year for them to be a part of it. So one training and they're taken care of it. And they do multiples, especially where Becca's new.
Yeah.
I've already got her signed up for 2 or 3. Those costs can be quite significant. Same with FICA Medicare mileage. Wait, I already hit that. Wow, where'd I go? Okay, we're professional tech. Planning board and appeals. We haven't used that $975, so I lowered that down to $500. It's basically printing or any materials that they need for the stuff that they do. We have been getting a lot more subdivision applications. So I feel there needs to be money there. So I did reduce it a little bit. Meal allowance on this, we had it at 500. I put it down to 300. I don't think I've ever actually had a meal reimbursed. I've never asked for a meal reimbursement because anytime I go to something, they offer lunch. If I do have to send somebody to a 2-day training or whatever, then there may be a meal allowance. Legal expenses, this is the other side of that. So our attorney fees are $185 an hour. Believe it or not, that's actually lower than our previous attorney. But with that said, he gave me an estimate when I first met with him on the handling of an illegal junkyard and going through the court process without any issues. And he estimated it to be about $3,500 per. $6,000 isn't enough. Yeah. In addition to any other legal things that we have to deal with. So I put $15,000 there, thinking that's where it should be. I welcome anybody's input on whether they think that's fair. I'll tell you, if you look at some of the situations we've dealt with in the past as a town, there was one in particular in Buckfield that I know between legal fees, cleanup, and everything else was close to $60,000. So 15 doesn't.
It's probably why
But I felt without having a firm, like, how are we handling this aspect of it, it's a good start.
Yeah.
And then I obviously wrote this before I had brought the potential of an ordinance that would address some of this stuff too. Which, if there was an ordinance and there were violations, it would cost the legal fees to go after those civil penalties. But if we actually recoup some of that money, that would be revenue. But again, you can't estimate what doesn't exist, so. So that's where I'm at with that. Bonding has been fine, $1,000 covers it. Audit service, you can see I gave you the 22-23 contract, that was 9,500. 23-24 was 11,400. I'm anticipating another increase, so I'd say 12,500. We could put out an RFP, but let's face it, we just had RHR Smith do 4 years worth of audits. They've been amazing. I'm still waiting on the paperwork, but at the end of the day, why would we go and take everything that they just put all that hard work into and getting the town straightened out and then dump it for somebody else? I think that would be foolish. And I think they deserve at least another couple years unless we have an issue. But I haven't seen any issues with them. They've been wicked professional and helpful. And I would recommend staying with RHR. Deed services, I increased a little bit. But anytime we file a lien, it's $19. Anytime we do any of that stuff, it's $19. So, and then they charge us on a quarterly basis for transfers. So for processing transfers. Contracted services, I got $5,000. That's the IT contractor for him to come in, just service our equipment, make sure it's right. I've been having talks with him about, we don't have a backup right now. And as a guy with an IT degree, that's foolish. So I've gotten estimates from him on offsite and onsite backups, and at a minimum, I think we should have offsite cloud storage for our servers.
I completely agree.
Absolutely.
Trio is good. It's hosted, so if this place, knock on wood, nothing happened to this building tomorrow, I could access all the tax information, everybody's payments, our accounts. I could access that from my house. So it's that's backed up. But anything on our servers, the years and years and years of data, all that stuff is on our server that we have, and there's a lot of it. I think right now we have close to 6 terabytes.
Yeah.
So the price of that offsite backup is dependent on the amount of storage you need, as well as our assessing data, our Patriot, all of the reval information. We've got it in 2 places. We've got it in Trio, but we've also got it in Patriot, which is good because you have 2 redundant systems. So if one fails, the other one still got it. But I'd like to have that backed up offsite as well in case something happens there. Which is on a different line, but this is just the IT contractor's hourly rates, and $5,000 I believe is sufficient. Technology line, that's the 21,000. I've broken down the cost of everything. I think I put server backup, online offsite, $379.99 a year. It's the quote I got from him. I also have him give me a quote for antivirus because our antivirus didn't exist. I get 7 PCs. There's $1,000 a year. You do use Constant Contact. So last year, our line of 21,885 included a bunch of money that we had set aside for the potential of community engagement. I've been using Constant Contact. It doesn't cost anywhere near what we put aside. So any of the increases that were in here came out of what was there for that. So I think currently, with the number of people we have subscribed to it, it's like it's actually less than $500 a year. I want to see that grow, and obviously I'll grow the budget with what the demand is. But right now we got 70 people in Buckfield that are on that list. I'd like to see 700.
Yeah.
But
What's that?
our
Email.
our mailing list, our emailing list. So like tonight, right? I sent out notice to everybody that's on the email list about tonight.
Yeah, that's how I got.
Yep. So see, it worked.
Good.
You know what would be better? All the things on the website, they go see Facebook. A lot of us older folks don't use Facebook.
Yeah.
And we can't get that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to Facebook to look at what's on our Facebook.
Yeah. There should be a feed on the website that without logging into any account, you can see old posts, old videos, but definitely the email list.
Some people get scared because it says Facebook.
Yeah.
But basically, this whole thing right here is a mirror of our Facebook. So anything we put on Facebook without you having Facebook, you can get right on our website. And it updates every hour. So if I post something, it may take an hour to get there, but it'll be there. That way I'm not having to update it on Facebook and update it on the website. It's just all right here.
My daughter will tell me she'll see stuff on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this is nice. I mean, you can view it on Facebook, but really the only thing that you're not seeing here that you would see on Facebook is the comments. And to be honest with you, most of what's on our Facebook doesn't get commented on. It gets shared somewhere else and commented on. You don't really comments anyways.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah. Wow. And then some of the stuff, like I had posted the draft ordinance, I believe, for the billing and restitution. Like if you click the picture, it'll actually pull it up. I
I
mean,
read that for the junkyards.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's why I run it all there.
yeah, because I do add the packets there if I have time to give you scans. So,
All of you bringing that up, but
yeah. And then the bottom is just the YouTube videos. Most people will watch them on Facebook. For people who don't have Facebook, they can come down here. Like the last one I posted is February 4th, but you can go to YouTube and watch them as well. The junkyard one, I think you read out of the packet. It was, I presented, example ordinances and policies from other towns for them to use as like a baseline. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. It's a hot topic.
Mhm. Probably one of the things I've received the most feedback on.
I live on Deer Drive,
Mhm.
so looking across the street, it's.
Yeah.
So, I mean, technology, I mean, I'm starting to be what some would consider an older person when it comes to more modern technology, but I try to utilize what the bulk of the community knows how to use, whether that's Facebook or the website or, constant contact's one thing. They do offer the text messaging option. I still haven't figured that part out. But the problem now I get with, I don't know, 611 doesn't together, some people check email, some people check the text messages, some people don't check it either. But I'm trying to get the information out as best I can. I think the town could benefit. I was against it a few years ago, but I think there are cheaper options out there that would be more beneficial to like having a similar sign to what Turner has or something to post like, hey, select board meeting tonight, where it doesn't require us to go out there with the plastic numbers and, change it. Something that's relatively easy to program from the computer. We can update with, information for people, road closures, whatever, emergency stuff can go out there. I think at some point, if we can find a grant or a relatively inexpensive way to do that, that would be a good option for the town.
As long as it's not whatever line X in South Paris.
Yeah, I think, right.
Yeah. Something super bright.
Yeah.
I just need something that.
Like the LED, yeah, right, like.
Yes.
The tree, wait, did you say that is the ops, like, sort of like a smart backup?
Trio is basically the brain of the operations. Trio is what we use for tax purposes, receiving everything. So that's our web. It's Trio Web, so it's hosted.
It's web-based.
Yeah, it's web based. So that's all of our maintenance and support for all of the multiple modules that we have. The payroll, budgeting, personal property, real estate, all that different stuff's incorporated in there.
And then with the antivirus software, so you're saying before this line, like we haven't had antivirus, have we been running into issue with that?
No, we haven't, but the antivirus software that was installed on our computers, it was actually something that was paired from when we had NDS, and we haven't had NDS in 2 years. So guess what? It wasn't working anyways.
Yeah.
So I need something more current that isn't controlled by a software that we use. Just to be on the safe side, I just replaced these computers. It needs to be,
Yeah.
we need to make sure we're protecting it.
Yeah.
So it's something that, a lot of us don't think about very often. We just but it does need to be done.
I know, and you never know, like, there's so many different creative and convincing phishing scams out there, like, you never know.
Yeah.
Click it on.
I contemplated getting rid of Dropbox, but I utilize Dropbox a lot for like code enforcement. It's easier for me to just upload a bunch of files there that he can access offsite, or for the attorney, or I dealt with stuff with the state I had to do for the grant. Like I can't email the files to him. So with Dropbox, I can create a separate folder, I can put everything in it, I can share the link with them, only they can access it, and it's done, so it actually is a usable tool. I never had Adobe.
Okay.
I just used the basic Adobe Reader. And then I realized I was wasting hours and hours retyping up documents that already existed. The ability to convert it over to a Word document without having to pay for the individual, thing, keep it a PDF and update the files. I mean, I use that on a daily basis, and so I was obsessing. So I wouldn't advise getting rid of that.
Okay.
Our HR direct is $95 a year. That's how we do our applications. So when people apply online, they just go in, they fill it out. It also stores it because we have to retain those for 2 years. So I have them digitally, I print them all off and keep them in a folder. We burn enough paper.
Yeah.
Home base is our time clock.
Mhm.
$600 a year is pretty cheap considering.
Yeah.
Time cards are pricey, and it's Monday morning when I come in, I can print them all off. They're done. And then Patriot is our assessing program where we house all our data. Historic preservation. I didn't put anything in this line because I moved it to a different line. Because for years, the last few years I've been here, we had it and we haven't done any historic preservation. $2,000 a year doesn't get you much for historic preservation.
Yeah.
So we have a historic preservation reserve fund. I guess I lied and there was another appropriation I did ask for because I forgot about this one. Rather than raise that money and have it lapse to fund balance when we don't spend it, I'm recommending that we take that $2,000 and put it in that reserve fund so that we accumulate enough.
Yep.
I can find a contractor to get some of these older books too and get them digitized, or some of them need to be rebound. I have the original proprietors books from when the town was founded prior to 17 whatever year we were.
Yeah.
1793. And they're really brittle, so the ability to have somebody digitize that and make it permanent instead of worrying about something happening to it would be good. I think we would lose a lot of history if anything happened to this building,
Yeah.
Yes,
because that archive has a lot of information that a lot of towns in New England do not have. I had a gentleman come in this week. He's writing a book on trees, I think is what he said. But the proprietor's books reference certain trees on certain lots, and he was like beside himself that we had the information that we had. So I think that's something that Buckfield should be proud of, and we should make sure that we put money aside to make sure that we take care of it before it walks away. Phone, fax, and internet, I just increased $100, so it's not a slight increase. Insurance. Workers' comp has pretty much stayed consistent, so I left that at 30. The accident insurance is youth sports insurance and fire department insurance for our firefighters. That's 1320. That's fine. And then the property and casualty line, I already told you, I budgeted for 12 and a half. They told me 12. They're estimating 2, so I'd still just keep it at 12.5. The amount of savings you would get there would be minuscule. Right. Assessing. There's a slight increase, a slight decrease. I just adjusted based off the math. And then adjusted everything accordingly. FICA wasn't calculated correct last year. So I've recalculated those so they're the correct numbers, as well as paid family medical leave. Everything else stayed the same. Manny and I have been working with LandGrid out of Colorado to digitize our tax maps. We got those done. We're still working on the finalization process so I can get new ones printed out. But they've created all the GIS data. And with the information from our accounts that we'll have them manually do. They'll update lots for like $2 to $3 a parcel. The initial cost was just getting the initial work done, so it was roughly $4,500. But we'll have updated tax maps. We'll have them do the annual updates. They'll generate the ones that we need to print, and either I'll have them print them or I'll send them off to grassroots and have them printed. But ideally, what I'd like to have in the future is the ability to load that stuff online in the GIS format so that people can go onto our website and then click on their parcel and get all the information, or if realtors or whatever are looking for information, they could just click on it and get the information without, because that would save so much time for everybody. And in 2025, I think a lot of towns do that. It's one benefit of O'Donnell is he's got a lot of that stuff digitally on his website for all the town he covers, but That's just a want for the future. I think it would be good. But good news, we'll have updated tax maps. We won't be looking at 2021 anymore. General government municipal center, everything's relatively the same. I took $10,000 off of the building maintenance and repair line and added that into the reserve fund appropriation. So rather than spend all the 40,000 one year, we got more expensive projects, save over a couple of years, not have to borrow money. Anybody that's been in the town office side of this building knows the carpets need to be replaced. The wallpaper needs to come down, the walls need to be painted. There's a lot of flooring in there.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten a quote yet because I don't think we have the money that it would take to do it. But that is something that needs to be done. Since we've already put the amount of money we have into this building, the roof, once we use the grant funds and replace the windows in the town office side and hopefully eventually replace the windows in the rest of the building, it's clear that this building's staying. I would like to get the exterior of the building painted. There's some fascia out here that needs to be replaced. The sign out front is in rough shape. It needs to come down and either a new one made or that one needs to be restored. I don't know if that needs to be restored. It looks pretty dry. Little things, the front stairs, the concrete that goes down is cracking. It needs to be repaired or fixed, or I'm not a masonist. I'm not a mason, so I don't know what goes into it, but something needs to be done. The blocks, the landscaping stones in the front, they're falling apart. They need to be replaced. The grassy area that we now have where the bushes used to be, I'm still open to somebody doing something there. I just planted grass to keep it easy until somebody comes up with a plan. But that's still an option out there if people are interested in coming up with an idea that doesn't involve you guys coming down damaging it or invasive species.
Right.
But that's basically just generalized maintenance. I think I listed some things. Actually, most of what I just said is already here. We tried carpet washing the carpets. We rented one. We went over it. It did nothing.
Yeah.
That carpet is just,
It's ancient.
it's been here since the 90s. It's time to replace it.
Yeah, that's
I
a-
mean, we've already replaced this floor. We replaced the flooring out there because of the burst pipes. The only problem is this is really hard to keep clean.
It's nice though.
It's just you wash it, you can see every smudge and it's just,
Yeah.
it does look nice. It's not as noticeable. So that's where we are with the municipal center. We've already gone over the rest of everything, just to wrap up the night to make it easy. Actually, before I do that, does anybody have any questions?
No, I think you've done a good job going through it.
So the last thing I just want to go over, we've gone over some of it, but we might as well hit on the revenues.
Yep.
Just it was like we had hit on earlier. Before any of this gets passed out to residents, we always have a warrant article to approve local and state revenues. Ironically, some people vote no. I don't know why they would vote no on revenues, because if you vote no on revenues, you're voting to increase your taxes. So to break this down, we're currently working on that 3-year contract with Hartford. The number that we've given them is in the ballpark of 30,000. I can't remember if it's the exact number or if it's slightly different. I think it is an exact number. So that amount is 30,000 for the Hartford contract. Other than that, there's no other revenue for fire currently. If an ordinance gets passed to do the restitution or the billing for what's the term I'm looking for, cost recovery, there may be some additional revenues, but that wouldn't affect us till the following year. And then public safety and rescue, last year we proposed 240,000. I had come in with a lower number, the select board adjusted it, and we did that based off of transfers. So it's always been a sore subject in Buckfield. Why are we doing transfers? You know, we're not a business, blah, blah, blah. It was a good way to help pay for or decrease the cost to the town if we had the crews available. Unfortunately, in the last year, the whole dynamic has changed and they're not out there anymore. So we have gone with a lower number because we know there's not as many transfers. There are some, we do get some, but we don't want to over budget or over propose and then come in super short. So we came in at 225. That includes the $26,000 in revenue from the Hartford and Sumner contracts. I'm currently renegotiating the new 3-year agreement with Sumner. I have to meet with them. That number potentially could increase before you approve that. I don't know. I gotta look at what I have on the contract, but I am seeking to have Sumner pay a higher share of per capita. It's not close, I mean, it's not near what we pay, but at the same time, cost of everything's increasing. I think their cost should go up a little bit. I did mention it to one of their selectmen. He's like, "Oh, that's a big number," and like, it is what it is. We covered the whole town of Sumner. So that could fluctuate up, or it could stay the same, but right now that's where we're at for that. So that 225 and that 30,000 will basically, if our budget's approved and the revenues are approved, that 255,000 comes off whatever fire and rescue costs, and that's what we tax out, and tax out the full amount. Parks and Rec, so this is, rec sports, we do T-ball, baseball, softball, soccer, basketball. We have been adjusting the registration fees based off the cost of goods, balls are more expensive. Referees and umpires are more expensive, uniforms are more expensive, but I had some good solid information. We started utilizing a software called Sports Engine. So Rec basically had their own website. We handle all the registrations. They process the payments. They automatically deposit to the town website. It's been great. It's also great for rostering kids and stuff. But with the increases, I anticipate that our revenues with sponsorships and stuff should be about $3,750 more, which is good. The cost of Rec. Oh, that's the one thing I didn't hit on was Rec.
So
We'll go back to that, sorry. The cost of Rec obviously has gone up, and with that, if the revenues are increasing, that's good too. The church, the $200 for the old church, that's the trust fund interest that we get, which goes into maintenance of the church. I'd like to see the church at a minimum at least get painted this year and that window fixed. But that's where that money comes from. The library revenues, we get allocations from Hartford and Sumner. We get appropriations from multiple trust funds, and then they get donations. We have a donation reserve. I'm recommending $3,500 to come out of that, and then limited amount of photocopies that they get, and that's what builds up their revenue, which was a little slight increase. Public Works, this is primarily $7,000 the solid waste station, or the solid waste department pays the town of Buckfield to rent tobacco. So basically, that's $4,500 we budget for from the town of Buckfield, if my math is correct. And then goes back in as a revenue, and then Sumner pays their 35%, and then we get some money from the trust fund, as well as any driveway culverts we have to install. We charge for the cost of the culvert plus the material, so we recoup those costs. Cemeteries is cemetery, that's trust fund interest as well that we accept, so that we can apply that to maintaining the cemeteries. So for the 11,500 that we have for the cemetery, I think is what it was, 4,680 of it's all coming from trust fund money. Waste management, that's the Sumner share. So as you can see, Sumner share, based on the current budget, would go from 84,000 to 107. That's what they pay the town of Buckfield. And then the last page is state revenue sharing. Betty and Homestead actually isn't included in our state revenues that we approve, because it's all part of the actual commitment. So everything down to Betty is all stuff that we consider income from the state. As you can see, municipal revenue sharing is $100,000 less than last year. Local road assistance, I kept at 50 grand because it's been consistently around that for the last couple of years. General assistance, we budget for 2,000. The state reimburses us X amount. That's the $1,400 that we would recoup back. Any tree growth programs, so anybody who's got land in tree growth, that's the return that we get back from the state. I think I budgeted based off of our new calculations, so 6,500. Veterans exemptions, snowmobile registrations we accept. We typically get the 900, but then we usually have a warrant article where we ask the voters if they want to give 75% of that back to the snowmobile club, which we traditionally do. Pit tax loss, that's the manure waste pit reimbursement we get from the state, which is 2 of them in town, and that's about $1,000. So all in, you can look at the revenue totals. This includes those that homestead number and that Betty number. But so you see it's lower, but yeah, we're basically up against decreased revenues on a higher budget. And I don't really know how to battle that without cutting something. So back to Parks and Rec, which is on page 12.
And also I think
This is what I get for bouncing all over the place.
you're good, yeah, I think just page 10, we also bounced past, we just
Hydrants,
street
emergency.
lights,
Yeah.
you know, no
Okay.
could you?
I can hit those pretty quick.
Okay.
So we'll do Parks and Rec. So this is a lot bigger than what it was last year as far as accounts. I felt it made sense rather than just have one general line to have multiple lines, athletic equipment, uniforms and safety, just to kind of give a picture of the costs associated.
Yeah.
So this is a little different. That's why you see a lot of zeros because everything was rolled into one. So general, I'm now using just basically for metals, rake, shovels, field string, the stuff that we use on a regular basis to line fields and do that. I put that at 2,500. I compared it to invoices that we've had in the past. That seems to be the right number. Uniforms and safety. I know that seems like a lot, but most of that money comes from registration money anyways. And the registrations cover the cost of the uniforms or sponsorships. So you've got close to 100 kids playing on any various sport season that we have. A uniform, depending on the type of uniform, we've averaged roughly about $25 for a nice uniform. We used to do t-shirts. T-shirts are like $19 and they're terrible. So we've been going through D&B. They sell Champro. They're really nice uniforms. It makes Buckfield look really good when we go play other towns. And that's what the other towns are using. So you don't feel like the oddball out. The kids like them. I love seeing them wear them around town. Athletic equipment. We don't typically, there's certain things that we have to buy every year, like baseballs, we have to buy every year, softballs, we have to buy every year, soccer balls. We try to average like 12 new balls a year, and then we can phase out the 12 oldest because they don't last very long. So it's roughly $5,000, $4,750 we spend on various athletic equipment. Catcher's gear goes bad every couple, 3-4 years, we replace it with new stuff. It's kids' safety stuff. So yeah. Fundraisers, last year we had it set at 1,500. Without the participation of people doing fundraisers, I don't think it needs to be there. Primarily, this is just seed money for concessions that would then sale money would come back in as revenue, just to buy it up front. Or if we held a raffle or something, buying whatever it was that we're selling to raise the funds to come back as dues and membership. I don't know why I have it classified as that. Oh, yes, I do. Cal Ripken baseball dues and Babe Ruth softball dues. Those are the only two sports we have that there's dues associated with it. It's roughly $1,650. That also includes additional insurance for the kids and the coaches in the town. So that's where that cost comes from. Can't avoid it. Youth swim lessons. It's roughly $500 a year. Hartford puts that on. They send us a bill. We pay it. Umpire and playoff fees. Obviously, you can see that increased a lot because we've never really budgeted for it accordingly. Baseball umpires are, last year they were $75 a game. I've heard rumblings that it's different. Softball umpires, which I misspelled, are $60 a game, could increase. Soccer referees, I typically pay $40 per game, and then basketball referees are $25 a game. So on any given day, on any given season, multiple teams, we might have 12 to 20 home games in any sport. That adds up pretty quickly. Technology, that's our sports engine. $800 a year is what it costs. It's like $79 a month. That handles all the paperwork that we need, the registrations, the payment processing, everything. So we pay $800 for that, but that website this year generated, I think, close to $12,000 in revenue to the town. So it's definitely a good return on investment, especially when you consider there are no paid employees of the rec department other than me, but I'm doing it on my free time. So the volunteers that we have are all volunteers. Nobody gets paid for anything. Utilities, nothing's changed there except for porta potty rentals because of the number of teams and kids that we have playing sports. We have a growing need for porta potties at different locations. We can't have a bunch of 6-year-olds over at Bessie Field with no way to go to the bathroom. railroad bed, I kept $2,500. We really need to start putting some material into that, cutting back stuff. Well, you know, that's just materials that we're gonna need for that. There's some holes that need to be filled. Um, you know, the snowmobile and ATV clubs, you know, they get grants from the state too. There's probably a way we could pair up with them to do some of that maintenance as part of their trail system and you know,
Yeah.
we do the work or something and, you know, they can get the funding for some of that. So I think 2,500 is a good start. Um, the rec field, I reduced down to 38.25. That's basically field paint, field treatments, which by the way, I just want to clear, we only use vinegar, soap and water on the fields. We don't use pesticides. And then field line. The reason it was $9,000 last year was because we had to pay for one of the dugouts to be replaced, which will happen this spring. So all in was roughly a $3,000 increase. If you recall from the revenues, I believe our revenues were projected to be $3,000 increase. So essentially the rec is flat. And there's other things we'll talk about in the coming select board meetings. That I think would be a benefit recreationally for the town for all ages in, you know, in the future that I think will be good. So we'll go over that when we discuss it. Our select board meetings. All right, and then just to go back and hit on the quick items, for anybody that's not familiar, hydrant rental. We have no say in that. We have to pay $62,720 to the water district for fire suppression or whatever they call it. It's mandated. Our streetlights, I lowered it a little bit. This has actually gone down quite a bit from what we used to pay because when I first got here, I had CMB convert all the headlights, all the streetlights to LEDs, which have reduced our cost.
We still like paying for that? Cause I know we were doing like,
There was no cost associated with it. So the streetlights are leased.
yeah,
If we own the streetlights, we'd be paying a lot of money. I'm glad we leased them. It's much cheaper when there's an issue. I call CMP and say, come fix it, and they fixed it.
too.
If they change poles and we own it, guess what? We have to pay to move it. So it's a good deal. And I think it's really, have you ever been down in the center of town where the town's out of power and there's no streetlights on, it's pitch black?
Yeah, it's pretty clean.
It's weird. So I think the lights look better. I mean, to be honest with you, from the old lights that we used to have, I think they're brighter. Hopefully it doesn't annoy the people that live next to them, but it's been a cost savings for the town.
Yeah, they're like something like 70% more. It's crazy.
Emergency management, last year Vivian put this together when she was the EMA director. The only thing I kept the same about this was the stipend you give me for being the EMA, as well as the FICA and Medicare associated with it. Wait, why does that FICA look so high? That FICA number's wrong.
Yeah.
What's 6.2% of 1,500?
$6.2,
Yeah,
93.
and $3, not $930. So that's cost savings. I took everything else out. I mean, I'm working in the town office. If there's emergency management stuff, I got my own paper, I got my own equipment. There's a laptop specifically for it that I use for that stuff, separate from mine. It's already purchased. I already have a town cell phone. I don't need any of that. I'm a full-time employee. I don't think I need a deputy EMA director at this point, unless you tell me I need to have one. So I felt cutting that back to that was sufficient. As far as training and stuff, I already have a training line under admin. I don't think we need to separate it out. My training is my training. I'm a town manager. I cover all aspects of the town. So it's just an area that I felt we could just cut a lot of costs that we didn't need to. And then the public safety facility, that's where I pulled all the building and maintenance stuff from the fire rescue building, so that I only have to write one payment instead of two. The building, there's some things I noted in here. The building's 10 years old now. My house is 10 years old. There's certain things that need to be taken care of. One of the biggest things in that building that I will say is those floor tiles. My recommendation, tear up all the floor tiles and do what Walmart did. Buff the floor and epoxy it, and it's easy to clean. It's, you know, it
Yep. The new epoxies are fantastic.
and it'll flex with the building. I haven't quoted that, it's probably pricey, I don't know, but I think replacing tiles every, and it creates a trip hazard, people are coming in there out of the snow and ice, and I just. I don't want them tripping over in the dark, and they need to be waxed, and it never looks good, it's just. I want it to be as limited maintenance, right, it can sweep them up and the floor is clean.
Yep,
And it's safe.
Those practice.
what's that? Yeah. Yeah,
And that's the other thing, right? If there's a burst pipe or something in there and you got those tiles down, they all come up. So now you gotta fix it. If it's epoxy, guess what? You squeegee the floor and it's good to go. So that's one thing that needs to be taken care of. There's some broken siding. That's just, we're in a windy spot and some of it wasn't mounted right, so that needs to be replaced. There's 2 windows in that building. One of them's cracked and I don't know how it cracked because it cracked on the outside, but the window needs to be fixed. And then the one in like the day room. I don't know if it was installed improperly, but you can literally watch the wind blow the curtain in front of it when it's closed. So I think that whole window is like, so those are little things that need to be done. The electronic door locks that they have over there, they've all lived their life cycle. We've been band-aiding them together. They're not cheap. The ones that are over there, I quoted, they're like $1,600 a piece. I found some that are $500 a piece, easier to use, and it doesn't require me to hand out 47 keys to the building and then change them every time somebody leaves, so. That'll need to be taken care of next year, so that's all part of that 17.5, as well as regular maintenance. The sign needs to be redone. Maintenance items, preventative maintenance stuff. And that, I believe, covers everything except for community. Basically, what we raise for flags for the cemeteries for Memorial Day, which is $900, which is what I spend every year. The flags can't be used year after year, they're all tore up by the time I get them back. And then $600 for the community events committee. And that's basically for trunk or treat, community day, and any other events that they hold.
Does the beautification committee have a budget?
I typically take it because it's focused to this area, so anything that they need. Within reason, I take out a municipal center budget, so plants, loam, mulch, any of that stuff.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean, as long as it's reasonable, I just take it out of maintaining this. One of the things that we need to be cognizant of this year. And no offense to the public works crew, but the curbs in this area have taken a beating over the last 14 years, 15 years. And all the ones that are over here are now gone because of the loader, you just couldn't see them, but. We're gonna have to do some curb work here, but I think what I'm gonna do is probably rent the curb box, have the guys pick up the hot top, and they'll do it themselves. But that's something that'll need to be done here, and there's certain patchwork that might need to be done in the parking lot too. Yeah.
What is the community social services?
All right, so social services, that is the line every year that the town raises to give. Funds to. Like community concepts or seniors plus, we give every town in Maine gets requests every year for funding. There's a social services committee, which I believe is, all the positions are open right now. That meets once a year, reviews those requests. Make sure that it meets like they're serving Buckfield residents. And then determines what of that $3,200 is divvied up between those requesting organizations. The numbers stayed flat for as long as I've been in Buckfield, back in Buckfield. We haven't increased it, we haven't decreased it. If you look in the town report, I think you can either see the requests or what we issued. I think I put the requests in there for last year. But it's mostly like social programs that help like seniors and
Better.
cancer victims, sexual assault victims, stuff like that. And they usually send us a report of how many people in Buckfield, like not who, but how many people they've helped or what they provided for services, how many meals they provided or things like that. It's programs that basically keep people from utilizing general assistance if they had no other option, you know what I mean? They usually give us some sort of relevant financial data on what it costs or what the equivalent was to what we donated. Or what they donated or offered for services. And it's usually considerably higher than what we.
I think that was gonna be the next question.
Yeah, like
Is
they
that-
have access to like better deals for, certain services, so. They're able to do it through them and then we give them a little bit of cost back to make up for it.
Trying to
What are
remember off the top of my head who everybody was last year, but I can't
I
remember.
know, I forget, I
Yeah.
reshuffled some.
Light flight asks every year.
RCAM's one of them that
Yeah.
comes every
There's
year.
a bunch.
Community Concept, Seniors Plus is consistent. I think Life Flight asks us like every year. I think last year was the first year we've given to Life Flight in a while. But what they request and what they get typically is different. I think Life Flight's ask is a lot higher than what we're able to. So. It's a good question though. I
Yeah,
think in 3 years, nobody's asked me that question.
I've wondered it for 5 years.
And I guess the church was the last thing. I put $5,000 in there. Again, this is. The old church is like a pillar of Buckfield. It's been the town office. I believe they had basketball games in it. It's been in the town forever. It needs work. We had an engineering study that said it needed close to $1 million worth of work. There's a second opinion that said, oh, with a bunch of volunteers, we could probably get this fixed for $25,000. And then there was really no movement to do anything past that. So all I really budget for is electricity. And like I had mentioned earlier, I'd like to see at a minimum the building painted. It's looking a little rough right now. It's needed to be painted since 2020.
Yep.
The steeple needs work. There's things on the steeple which could be very pricey. There's options that the town doesn't have because we're not a nonprofit. I mean, we are, but we aren't the traditional nonprofit. And I don't know what the future of the old church looks like for Buckfield, but if we continue to only do the bare minimum, I fear that church is just gonna fall into the ground.
not in the.
Yeah, no, the one up on High Street, the one that's on our seal.
Yeah.
It's tough because it's like, we should maintain the building, it's a town icon. What's nice is we're not bound to keep it like historically accurate. If we do need to repair things, we don't. That original quote for
Yeah.
like $250,000 was for a historical restoration, which is not something we need to do. We don't receive federal dollars for it.
So our hands are tied on what we can do as far as like,
But it's also a weird space. Like there's no bathroom, there's no parking.
there's one outlet.
Yeah.
It's housed, I mean, it's housed weddings before,
Mhm.
but there's no parking. We only own an acre.
Yeah.
So, and it's on a hill, so you can't just like park cars on the lawn.
Right.
So the only option is to run it all the way down High Street, which we remember that, well, you might not because you weren't here, but when they had the funeral home, man, High Street was a nightmare. It was a one-lane road. So you try to find a creative way to use the space, but without the electricity, the restrooms, the plumbing, the parking, there's only so many things you can do with it. So it's like, what's in the best interest of the church?
So I'm gonna ask a real basic question.
Yeah.
Where's High Street?
You're good. It's if you drive down this road and you cross the bridge, instead of taking the right to head to the high school, you just go straight on towards your spot.
Okay, it's High Street.
Yeah.
It's directives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really is a nice building. The problem that I face when writing these budgets and stuff is if I actually put in the number that I believed we needed to take care of that building and restore it to what it needs to be just to be there.
Yeah.
The taxpayers of Buckfield can't afford it and they wouldn't approve it. So this board and the residents, I think, really need to determine sooner than later before the church falls down. What direction does the town want to take with this? Do they want to continue to hold on to the liability of it, right? Because the steeple is, I mean, it's not gonna fall down tomorrow, but if something happens and it does and it hurts somebody, like. what's in the best interest of the town, what's in the best interest of the church. Nobody wants to see the church torn down. We'd want to see the church restored, at least so the outside looks like its original intent, but there's a lot of people in town that have lived here their entire lives that are really married to that church and don't want to see the town get rid of it, but maybe it's in the best interest of the church to find a way to transfer it to a nonprofit that can do something with it, or a private seller, a private buyer who would restore it to its original state and keep its.
There is a committee, old Church on the Hill committee that,
Hasn't met and
yeah, but it's just tough. It's
Yeah, it's just a weird space to work with, because it's
a
like,
beautiful-
then,
beautiful, it's up.
we want to put money into it, but then it's like, right, but what's the end goal here? Why are we putting money into this? What can we use it for past storage?
On that, it's just money in general.
Yeah.
The one thing I was just gonna, before I think is to have all you here, just be cognizant of what people can pay.
Mhm.
You know, our tax bills. Campbell, I've been in here talking to him, you know, I pay over $10,000 a year in taxes.
Mhm.
You know, we can't afford to see things just keep going up and up.
Mm,
And I understand everything on here seems to be valid.
Yeah.
But we just have to weigh what people can afford.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, you talked earlier about the fees for going after delinquent taxes. Taxes keep going up, we're gonna have more delinquent fees. You know, so it's a balancing act,
Yeah.
and we just have to be careful on it for
I agree.
what's realistic,
Yes. Yeah.
you know, and for what you get for your tax dollar, you know, and that's all, I guess that's my last.
We're all with
ask
you.
for you.
Yeah.
We're right with you.
Oh, and I'm right there with you too. And I sometimes feel bad because I'm always bringing up the school situation, right? My kids go to the school. I love the school. I graduated from Buckfield High School. Obviously, it's a totally different school system than when I went to school. You graduated from RSU, right? So, like the schools that we attended it's the same school, but it's different. And the fact that our limited stay in the process has resulted in the $2 million a year cost to the taxpayers without really.
It's a big ask to have people, haul themselves all the way up to Rumford for their budget meetings and any meetings that they.
It's 9 o'clock and you two are still here, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
But like, it's really hard to convince people to, like engage in that process, and
Mhm.
it's a juggling act. And I think for years the town kept the town's true costs down, and anytime the school went up, we just cut something else at the town level. And then it got us to a point where, 5 years ago, our town clerk worked 70 hours a week and made $36,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's
That's
And she did it because she was loyal to the town, but we just kept cutting our throats and just kept accepting the increases that we were getting on that end. And I would welcome anybody to go down to the high school. It's a great school on the inside, but like some of the stuff on the outside needs to be fixed. And it's where's the $2 million going? We finally got a new sign,
we did. So that looks great.
except for the piece that's holding the sign that still needs to be repaired. That took like 2 years worth of like emails and constant like what's going on.
It's my understanding that we had to join the RSU because the state of Maine passed a law that said you have to have 10,000.
That was the biggest bait and switch in Maine history ever. Because as soon as we joined the RSU, they changed their mind, said, "Oh, we can do it doesn't matter." So and unfortunately, it's too expensive. It would be too expensive in my opinion. Again, I don't know this, and I haven't talked to an attorney, but it would be too expensive in the long term for us to do that and maintain our schools without our taxes going up. It'd be just as expensive, and I'm not saying it doesn't cost a lot of money to run the school. I'm just wondering if some of the smaller areas in the budget are actually directly benefiting the education of kids, or if money's just being moved to different areas and benefiting other parts of the district.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Yep.
and I'm not trying to call anybody out, I don't, their budget is like 75 pages long or more, and it's really hard to understand. I had to go to this, I had to ask people at the school to explain why, 2 months before the end of the year, it looked like we hadn't paid 50% of our teachers' wages, and then come to find out there's, what the teachers who take the summer pay, spread it out, and it was just like, to me, looking at it from a budget perspective, if it's 3/4 into the year, I should have spent 3/4 of the budget, right? So. I think there's,
It's an intimidating process and it doesn't help that we're so far away from the rest of the district too. So we're hoping that with these upcoming budget meetings, we can get them to send a bus over. So anyone who's interested who maybe can't, doesn't feel safe driving themselves at night, or, they can all carpool up there. But again, that's even if there is interest that someone wants to take that slot of their evening out of their week.
and we did, Sumner and Hartford, we all forwarded a letter to the school board requesting that they consider rotating these annual meetings between Buckfield High School and Mexico, so that the people in Rumford, Mexico can share in that travel burden that we have to share in. Whether they do that or not is to be seen. Obviously this year, they do, they're not live.
As it happens, there's a seat coming up on the board as our representative. So
They do record them. I think they post them usually within a day or two. I don't know if they offer the Zoom thing. I think they do, but you can't
It's very
speak.
hard to find.
Then, yeah,
I think it's recorded, like you can go watch it after the fact.
yeah, but it's that participation aspect.
What's done is done.
And their meetings are different in the way that, like, the board changed their format of these meetings. They have public comment at the end of the meeting. And usually they interact with people throughout the meeting so that people can speak to what's on the agenda. The school board has public comment at the very beginning of the meeting before they even address anything.
And you have to sign up to talk.
So I've spoken at one before, it's just a different, like, how can I speak to something you haven't discussed yet? Like, I don't know where your mind's at. But there's a lot of meetings like that in towns that run it that way, and it is what it is, but.
When you have increased participation, you do have to address some things, like the time that they're signing up to speak.
I mean, I think 3 minutes is fair, or 2 minutes is fair, or whatever, but when you don't know what you're speaking to until,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah, I could say a lot in 2 minutes.
What I would suggest too is like, if you do watch them, like after they're recording, don't hesitate to reach out to the board members or the directors. They do read the emails, and worst case scenario, send it to the superintendent. She's usually pretty receptive as far as getting back to me when I email her. And I know other people have emailed her too, and she'll usually divert it to the right people. But especially when it comes to the budget, if something's really, I don't even know what to expect.
Yeah.
But after having an 11.1% increase last year, the highest in the district, I'm hoping that we don't see a repeat of that or double. And with some of the stuff that's going on right now, I don't even know what that's going to look like.
Was that because previously not paying as much as we should have?
Buckfield has historically paid one of the highest shares in the RSU because
Population?
so the school budget, and I only know enough to be dangerous, so don't take any of this for fact, but my understanding, the way the appropriations for each town is determined is it's a formula based on 75% of the state valuation and 25% of the pupil count. So our student count has a share of it, but it's also 75% is our state valuation, and Buckfield state valuation. That's why we did the reval. Our local valuation stayed here, and the state valuation kept climbing. So we were one of the higher assessed towns in the district. This year, I did look at the 2025 state valuations, and Hartford increased at the state level. The proposed valuation that I saw from the state increased by $30 million. Last year they were last year they were about $35,000 less than Buckfield, or $1 million less than Buckfield. This year they're going to be $2 million shy of Buckfield. So I'm anticipating Hartford is gonna see a huge increase in their RSU 10 assessment, which is beneficial to us, but not beneficial to our community. But I still anticipate it's gonna be a higher increase of 5%. I have not seen, in 2 years, they have not come in at 5 or below.
Biggest concern is that those are all going to increase how much we're paying in taxes, and like to your point earlier. How do you know, if you don't have the money to pay these things, right, like how do you continue to live?
And that's the struggle, that's the struggle, because the only option, the only thing we can control if nobody's gonna engage the school to try and work on their budget, because it's a two-part system, right? You've got the school, county, I don't even know how the heck you get involved in the county aspect of it, besides email your county commissioners. Which is a very small percentage, it's like 200,000, so you're talking $1.50 of your mill rate. But when you look at our budget and then you deduct our revenues and you say, okay, Buckfield's municipal costs are 1.3 million. RSU 10 is 2 million. The only thing locally we can change is what are we cutting? What services are we getting rid of? What roads aren't we paving? And it's the only area that we can adjust, but it's gonna come at a cost. The solution to that is welcome things like development, controlled development, right? So these people come in and they want to develop a parcel of land and do a subdivision. So say you have 40 acres of land and you want to divide it into, I don't know, 8 5-acre lots with a house on it, right? So that 40 acres of land just went from the first acre is 34,800, and every acre after that's $2,000. Now that development, those 8 lots become 34,800 for the first acre of every lot, and then $2,000 an acre for the land, plus whatever buildings they put on them. So now you've got more people paying into the system, which benefits all of us.
Right.
I've lived in Buckfield my whole life. I like it rural, but clustered development in certain areas makes sense. Not just sprawl of just putting houses wherever or whatever, but these subdivisions oftentimes are good for the town because you put up a $400,000 house, it's $400,000 more assessment and $400,000 worth of tax revenue that then evenly distributes or deducts from everybody else's. So every house that goes up in Buckfield, even though we don't want everybody in our backyard, is a good thing. Business would be good, right? Because businesses pay taxes. They don't just pay property taxes, they pay personal property taxes. How do we attract businesses to Buckfield?
That's what I was just wondering, like, the mall up here, it's been closed for, what, a year now at least?
Yeah,
It's being auctioned in April, is what I've been told. So I'm hoping somebody will do something with it. We need something to attract people to Buckfield, and that's I want to hit on it with them and ideas that I have that I don't know may not be favorable, but potential that I see with something that is coming our way that I really think could benefit Buckfield as a whole recreationally, but also bring people to town that then would want to spend money and could solicit becoming.
On the flip side of that, back to the junkyard thing, we need to have the town look good so people want to come here.
exactly.
Yeah, that's another like 4-part system. We got to take care of a lot of things.
Fun though, because. Of people in town ultimately, because, I mean, if there's no money to collect, then.
So we get a court order that says it needs to be cleaned up. They refuse to clean it and pay some more. We do, and then we go after and we put a lien on the property, but say the property's not worth anything. So now we have got a worthless lien.
Yeah.
And a property we have to maintain, and it's tough. It's a double-edged sword.
I'll say I don't have one that I look at, so I don't know the things.
Drive down the town and it's like you can see the potential that's there and then you can see the stark reality that is there.
Well, yeah, you just look at the town website, which I did before I moved up here.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful looking at that overhead view coming in with the drone shot, you know, coming in.
Fall colors.
Front corner.
Yeah.
Around this corner.
What do you say? It was a bait and switch?
What's that?
Okay. No, I wanna see, I mean, I know. I grew up here in the nineties, like Buckfield. It can be a beautiful town, and it is, it just, there's things that we just need to work on, and. I mean, I don't think anybody on the board or myself wanna tell people what to do on their property. But when it affects your neighbors and it affects the town, economic growth and property values, and it just. Where's the line?
Yeah.
Don't make a mess, feel like you're.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you guys.
Thank you for participating and asking questions.
Seriously.
You guys did a great job going through it.
And if you do end up coming up with any questions, don't hesitate to email me.
Okay.
All right, you go about that. Force to come in.
Thank you very much, Cam. Good work.
Yes, thank you,
So you guys will be ready to present this on Saturday?
so ready.
Yeah.
Bob. Just kidding. So I guess, I mean, it's just us and they just left, so
That's it. Yeah.
just end the workshop at 9:27.
Yes.
Bang the gavel.
What bag you got?
Oh, what the heck? All your years.